Chapter 825. Although Wang Xuegong was the richest man in Qinglin County and his business also affected the city, there was still a big gap between him and Zhao Xianming, who had a net worth of billions. Therefore, he naturally looked more respectful on the surface and modestly said, "You must be joking, brother Zhao. It's just a small business of mine, and it's far worse than yours. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to support us, brother Zhao. Fragrant tea has been brewed in the VIP room upstairs. Let's go inside and chat." "All right," Zhao Xianming replied with a smile. Inside the VIP room, after the two men sat down, Zhao Xianming smilingly asked, "Brother Wang, the opening ceremony of your Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex is quite big today. Along the way, I saw a few business bosses." "That's right, I heard you also invited the superstar, Zhang Xinya, with a huge sum of money?" "It's my business friends, so I came here to have a small gathering," said Wang Xuegong smilingly. "As for Zhang Xinya, I did invite her to Qinglin County to sing at the opening ceremony to liven up the atmosphere." Zhao Xianming squinted his eyes and sighed, "You're really amazing, brother Wang. As a matter of fact, I tried to invite Zhang Xinya to perform at our company's welcoming party last year, but unfortunately, she didn't want to come at all. I can't compare with you in this regard, brother Wang." "Compare my ass." Wang Xuegong cursed inwardly. He had known Zhao Xianming for many years and knew that this guy was very stingy despite being rich and powerful. It was very likely that the appearance fee he gave Zhang Xinya was pitifully low, so it would be strange if she would come. This time, he had spent millions of yuan and used a lot of connections to invite Zhang Xinya over. After exchanging greetings, the door was knocked and Wang Xuegong's middle-aged female secretary came in and reported in a low voice, "Boss, young Master Wang is here." Mr. Tang and the superstar, Zhang Xinya, also came with him. Wang Xuegong's expression moved. His son knew Tan Xiu, so it was normal for them to come together. But how come the superstar, Zhang Xinya, also came with them? Thinking of this, he looked at Zhao Xianming and said with a smile, "Brother Zhao, I'll go receive the guests first. I'll introduce you to a big shot later." Zhao Xianming was stunned. He stopped Wang Xuegong and asked, "Brother Wang, don't keep me in suspense. Who is this so-called big shot?" Wang Xuegong smiled mysteriously and said, very soon, brother Zhao will know." Finished. He quickly left with the middle-aged female secretary. When he reached the stairs, he saw Tan Xiu, Zhang Xinyue, and his son, Wang Tao, coming up from below. "Boss Tang, Miss Zhang. From the looks of it, it seems like you already know each other?" Wang Xuegong said with a smile. "We've known each other before, but I didn't expect to meet you in Qinglin County," said Tan Xiu. Wang Xuegong suddenly understood and smilingly said, "Since you already know each other, then I don't have to introduce you to each other. Both of you, please follow me to the VIP lounge to rest. There's still half an hour before the opening ceremony. At that time, I will have to trouble the two of you." "I just came here to join in the fun, Boss Wang," said Tan Xiu. "There's no need to mention this troublesome matter again, right? But Xinya will have to sing a song later, so I'm afraid she'll be tired." "It's nothing I can do to make money for you, boss," said Zhang Xinyue with a faint smile. "Boss?" Wang Xuegong stared blankly and incredulity filled his eyes as he asked in astonishment, "Miss Zhang, you mean Boss Tang is your company's?" "He's just a small shareholder," said Tan Xiu quickly. "My friend invited me, so I couldn't refuse, so I invested some money. Please don't listen to Xinya's joke, Boss Wang." Wang Xuegong shuddered inside. Although Tan Xiu said it lightly, he knew who opened the entertainment company where Zhang Xinya worked, as well as the identity and background of those young masters. He never thought that Tan Xiu turned out to be friends with them. For them to be able to pull him to become a shareholder meant that their relationship must be very good. Maybe Tan Xiu also has an official background. As Wang Xuegong thought up to there, he immediately smiled and sighed. "Boss Tang is really young and promising. Since you're friends with my son, I hope you can guide him in the future." "It's only natural for friends to help each other," said Tan Xiu with a nod. After a few perfunctory words, they came to the VIP lounge. As fragrant tea and snacks were served, Wang Shuigong smilingly said, "Please continue chatting. I'm going to greet the other guests. Tao, take good care of Mr. Tang and Miss Zhang. Try to satisfy them no matter what their needs are." "I know, Dad." Wang Tao quickly glanced at Zhang Xinyue and nodded. Time flew by. The opening ceremony finally arrived. As the host and singer, Zhang Xinyue replaced her older sister, Zhang Xinya, and came to the entrance of the sales center. Cheers and shouts immediately came from the crowded crowd outside. Because of the celebrity effect, there were a lot of people who came this time. There were thousands of people. Zhang Xinyue was not her older sister, Zhang Xinya, but she didn't have the slightest apprehension. She took the microphone and said with a smile, "Welcome, everyone." After her speech, Zhang Xinyue handed the microphone to Wang Shuigong next to her. As the owner of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex, Wang Shuigong smilingly said, "Miss Zhang has already said what I wanted to say, so I won't be a repeater. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for your support. I also need to introduce some of the distinguished guests. The one next to me is the deputy mayor of the municipal government. This is the big boss of our city's Golden Rue Group, Boss Zhao, and this is our Qinglin County's county magistrate in charge of economic development. Lastly, I'd like to introduce a very distinguished guest to everyone." As Wang Shuigong spoke up to there, he immediately kept them guessing. But at this moment, thousands of people looked surprised because they could tell from Wang Shuigong's tone that the last guest's identity seemed to be extraordinary. At this moment, even Zhao Xianming and the city's deputy mayor were a bit surprised. Zhao Xianming walked a few steps and came to the edge, where Tan Xiu was standing. He cordially pulled Tan Xiu back to the place where he just stood and said with a bit of excitement, "This is the distinguished guest who came from afar. He's the very famous magnificent Tang Corporation's boss, Mr. Tan Xiu. Furthermore, everyone knows that he has another identity, the young divine Dr. Tang Xiu." "That's right. Tan Xiu?" In a flash, exclamations came from the dense crowd. Even the city's deputy mayor and Zhao Xianming looked shocked. The magnificent Tang Corporation's reputation was getting more and more resounding, to the point that everyone in the country knew about it. Yet, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss unexpectedly came here. This was a great figure. Furthermore, almost everyone present had heard of this young divine doctor. He was the man who was scrambled to be reported by the major media before the new year, the divine Dr. Tan Xiu who won the respect of countless people. Heavens! I never thought that the Star City Chinese Medical Hospital's young divine Dr. Tan Xiu would turn out to be the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. He's truly worthy of being the richest man in Qinglin County. He can even invite such a great figure like divine Dr. Tang. He's really amazing. This is big news. Being able to see such a great figure makes my life worth living. Fortunately, I came here today. Otherwise, how could I see such a great figure? This is so inspiring. I never thought that the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss would be so young. Moreover, he's also a famous young divine doctor in the Chinese medical field. He's simply my idol. Amazing! Looking at the excited faces below, Tang Xiu could only force a wry smile inwardly. For the sake of the red silk flower, he had to show his face in public again and even combine his two identities. It was likely that he wouldn't be able to keep a low profile in the future even if he wanted to. Wang Shuigong smilingly said, "Then, Boss Tang will say a few words." Tan Xiu quickly said, "Boss Wang, this is a bit against the rules, isn't it? The leaders of the city, the county, and the bosses of the business world are all here. Letting me speak." Zhao Xianming was rich and powerful in his hometown, and he was a very proud man. There were not many people who could catch his eyes these days. But when he looked at Tan Xiu, he admired him from the bottom of his heart. It was not only because Tan Xiu was the magnificent Tang Corporation's boss, but also because of his achievements in Chinese medicine. Therefore, Zhao Xianming stepped forward and smilingly said, "You've come from afar, Boss Tang. You're our most distinguished guest. If you're not qualified to say a few words, I'm afraid we won't dare to speak." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "You must be Boss Zhao. Since you've said so, Then I'll be bold and say a few words. I'm very happy to be able to attend the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex and see so many friends here. At the same time, I also wish the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex a complete success. Thank you, everyone. Wang Xuegong took the microphone handed by Tan Xiu and excitedly said, "Thanks to Boss Tang's auspicious words, I now announce the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. All friends and guests who are interested in buying villas, please go to the sales center to choose. At 12 noon, all the guests who ordered the villa in the morning will have the opportunity to attend a luncheon and listen to Miss Zhang Xinya, a well-known superstar." Shortly after, Wang Xuegong and the others retreated to the sales center and returned to the VIP lounge upstairs. Many people came to visit Tan Xiu due to his identity being exposed. After exchanging greetings, he and Wang Tao quietly went to the rooftop to have some leisure time. "Your dad is very good at doing business." Tan Xiu sat cross-legged on the rooftop, lit a cigarette and said, "No matter how good my dad is at doing business, he can't be compared to you, big brother Tang." Wang Tao said with a smile, "The name of the magnificent Tang Corporation is like a thunderclap reverberating in my ears. You've seen how fast my dad's expression changed after he learned your identity yesterday." Tan Xiu chuckled. Afterward, the two chatted for a long time until 12 noon. Only then did they come down from the rooftop and went to the luncheon hall. Chapter 8:26. The luncheon hall was set up in the property management area. When Tan Xiu's group arrived, nearly 100 guests had already taken their seats. As the staff led them to the innermost table in the middle, Wang Xuegong, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately got up and smilingly said, "Boss Tang, Miss Zhang, please take a seat." Zhang Xinyue gently sat down, but Tan Xiu didn't immediately take a seat. The moment he entered the luncheon hall, he faintly smelled a faintly discernible fragrance. The fragrance was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall where he had smelled it before. He looked around and found that nearly 100 guests were chatting merrily and wittily. Many of them were looking in his direction, causing him to furrow his brows involuntarily. He couldn't find the source of the fragrance, but he was somewhat vigilant inwardly. It was as though his sixth sense was playing tricks on him, giving him a vague feeling that danger was approaching. "What's wrong, Boss Tang?" Wang Xuegong looked around in surprise and then looked at Tan Xiu with a suspicious expression. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he slowly sat down and shook his head. "It's nothing. I just smelled something familiar." Wang Xuegong couldn't help but burst into laughter. After taking a seat, he said, "Since Boss Tang thinks that my place smells familiar, it means that you find this place familiar. If you don't mind, Boss Tang, you can choose one of the several villas in my Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex as your residence. Consider it a gift to thank you for coming here." "Thank you for your kindness, Boss Wang." Tan Xiu shook his head. "But I won't be staying here for long. I don't have much time to live in a villa, so I'll pass." Wang Xuegong nodded with a smile and no longer talked about this topic. Shortly after, Zhang Xinyue, who sat next to Tan Xiu, was invited to the temporary stage and sang 3 songs for everyone. Her voice was very beautiful. Although her singing skills were slightly inferior to her older sisters, there were no great musicians present, so they naturally couldn't distinguish it. The performance ended. As the other supporting singers came on the stage, Zhang Xinyue returned to Tan Xiu's side and sat down. A strange light flashed in her bright eyes as she took advantage of the fact that no one at the table paid attention to her and whispered, "What's wrong with you, Tan Xiu? Why do I feel that you're a bit absent-minded after coming here? Do you smell a special fragrance?" asked Tan Xiu with a frown. "Fragrance? You and Boss Wang also said that you smelled a familiar fragrance, but I didn't smell any fragrance at all," said Zhang Xinyue. "Now that the cold dish has just been sent over, perhaps your sense of smell is so sharp that you smelled it from the cold dish?" "Absolutely not." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "When we just entered the luncheon hall, there was that fragrance. There was a strong smell of medicinal herbs in this fragrance. In the past, even if one smelled a well-brewed medicinal soup, one would be able to distinguish the medicinal herbs used in the soup. But today, I don't know what's going on, but I can't tell what medicinal herb it is. I just feel that it's very familiar. It's that strange. Zhang Xinyue was surprised. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment, and the vigilance in his heart grew stronger. After a moment of silence, he responded to the toast of his table mates. Just as he was about to find an excuse to wander around, his expression suddenly changed, and his eyes instantly looked towards the door of the side hall. More than a dozen staff members were carrying stew over. As they approached, the smell became stronger and stronger. They didn't even need to breathe for the smell to enter their nostrils. You smell it, don't you? Tan Xiu turned to look at Zhang Xinyue and said in a low voice. Zhang Xinyue looked at Tan Xiu with a confused expression and said, Smell what? Is it that familiar smell you mentioned? I don't see it. How come I don't smell it? Tan Xiu's expression changed. He suddenly got up and quickly stood in front of the staff member who was delivering the dishes. Under the astonished eyes of nearly 100 guests in the hall, Tan Xiu then said in a deep voice, Can I taste this stew first? The staff member knew Tan Xiu's identity, but he never expected that the famous divine Dr. Tan Xiu would make such a strange request. Wang Xuegang was clueless about what happened, but he strode to Tan Xiu's side and asked, What's wrong with you, Boss Tang? I want to taste this stew first, said Tan Xiu. Wang Xuegang was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. Boss Tang, you don't have to be in such a hurry even if you're hungry, right? I'll have someone send a few more pots later if you like this stew. Tan Xiu shook his head and casually lifted the lid of the clay pot. When white smoke came out of the pot, Tan Xiu was startled and instantly smelled the scent of several medicinal herbs. Dark zen seed, carrion grass, scorpion fruit. All of a sudden, Tan Xiu's expression drastically changed and he shouted in horror, There's poison in this stew. What? Everyone in the entire luncheon hall was shocked and stood up from their seats. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, Wang Xuegang looked incredulous and hurriedly said, I think you're mistaken, Boss Tang. How can there be poison in this stew? I invited all the chefs from the county with a lot of money, so there's no need for them to poison people. Zhang Xinyue quickly ran to Tan Xiu's side and said, Don't talk nonsense, Tan Xiu. Can you really determine that there's poison in this stew? Yeah. You can't joke about this, Big Brother Tang. Wang Tao also quickly ran over and said. A murderous glint flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he coldly said, When I stepped into the luncheon hall, I faintly smelled a familiar smell. I wasn't sure where this smell came from, but now I finally figured it out. It's from the stew in front of me. Dark zen seed is a very poisonous thing that grows in cold and in places. Just one dark zen seed can poison a whale to death. Carrion grass is a plant that grows on decaying corpses and grows from the heart of a decaying corpse. To make this carrion grass thrive, it needs to be watered with fresh blood every 7 days, and it needs to be watered 49 times. Scorpion fruit is a highly poisonous fruit. It's grayish-black in color and somewhat similar in appearance to a scorpion. The place where this fruit grows is extremely harsh and can only be found in extremely cold places. Speaking up to here, Tan Xiu clenched his fists and was silent for more than 10 seconds before he continued. These 3 kinds of highly poisonous herbs are enough to poison thousands of people to death. But in addition to these 3 kinds of highly poisonous herbs, there should also be dozens of highly poisonous herbs mixed in this stew. However, the most terrifying thing is not these, but the flood dragon's heart blood. Wang Tao incredulously said, Big Brother Tang, isn't what you said too amazing? Let alone those highly poisonous things that I've never heard of, just this flood dragon's heart blood alone is impossible to exist. How could there be a flood dragon in this world? Tan Xiu indifferently glanced at him and said, You haven't seen or heard of it, but that doesn't mean that flood dragons don't exist. I've seen the introduction of this poison in an ancient medical book and know its name, drunken dragon powder. I can tell you that even if a drop of drunken dragon powder is mixed into a bowl of water and then poured into these stew pots, it's enough to poison all of us here. Gasp! Everyone in the entire luncheon hall instantly looked extremely unsightly. Many of them looked at the stew pots carried by the staff with lingering fear, as though they had seen a terrifying snake or scorpion. Go find an animal, be it a cat, a dog, a chicken, a duck, or a sheep. Hurry up. Tan Xiu ordered in a deep voice. Understood. When a staff member heard this, he immediately ran out in a hurry. Not long after, he came back with a live chicken and a live sheep. Pour a spoonful of the stew soup into their mouths, ordered Tan Xiu. Understood. Several staff members quickly came over and poured a spoonful of the soup into the chicken and the sheep's mouths. Then, they loosened them according to Tan Xiu's order. 2 minutes later, Wang Tao looked confused as he looked at the chicken and the sheep and asked in surprise, "Are they all right? Are you going to use them to test the poison, Boss Tang?" asked Wang Shuigong hurriedly. No problem. Tan Xiu didn't speak and just stared at the chicken and the sheep on the ground. Half a minute later, the chicken that was trying to escape suddenly fell to the ground. What? There's blood flowing out of its mouth. And its eyes, why are they so red? Someone beside him shouted in horror. Someone nearby exclaimed in horror. Everyone's body turned cold as though they were looking at the chicken that twitched a few times and then died with fear on their faces. After seeing the chicken's condition, Tan Xiu's eyes then fell on the sheep. A minute later, the sheep also slowly fell to the ground and then twitched and died. They're all dead. If the chicken had been poisoned to death, everyone's hearts were filled with fear. However, when the sheep was poisoned to death, everyone couldn't help but shiver. They subconsciously wanted to escape from this place. Wang Shuigong's heart was like falling into an ice cave. With a confused look on his face, he murmured, "Who poisoned the stew? Who would be so ruthless as to poison all of us here to death?" "Boss Wang, have you offended anyone recently?" Tan Xiu frowned. Wang Shuigong opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to answer. His business was so big, and even if he didn't offend anyone recently, he must have offended a lot of people in the past. How could a businessman, especially one with such a big business, not offend anyone? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then slowly said, "Call the police. This matter is too serious. If we can't find the real culprit, I'm afraid we won't have the appetite to eat anymore." A grateful look appeared on Wang Shuigong's face as he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "I'll call the police right away, Boss Tang. It's all thanks to you being here today. Otherwise, all of us." He didn't finish his words. But everyone in the luncheon hall was as clear as a mirror. If it weren't for Tang Xiu, they would have all been poisoned to death here today. It was him. He was everyone's savior. Chapter 8:27. Facing nearly 100 people, Tan Xiu didn't feel the slightest joy in his heart. On the contrary, his heart was filled with worry and bitterness at this time. Others were now considering who the real culprit was, but he was considering whether the drunken dragon powder was concocted by a cultivator. If it was, then the culprit must be an evil cultivator who was proficient in poisons. Take care, Boss Wang. Tan Xiu didn't like to meddle in other people's business. Although he was annoyed by the ruthlessness of the culprit, he didn't want to have a conflict with the culprit before confirming the identity of the culprit. It would be fine if the culprit was not an evil cultivator. But if it was an evil cultivator and he failed to get rid of him in time, it would definitely cause endless troubles in the future. He wasn't afraid of it, but he still had friends and family. It would be impossible to guard against the culprit if the culprit was someone he cared about. Zhang Xinyue's complexion was faintly pale. She was glad that Tan Xiu came to Qinglin County. If Tan Xiu hadn't come, her elder sister, Zhang Xinya, wouldn't have been so heartbroken. She wouldn't have traveled thousands of miles from Shanghai to attend today's luncheon in place of her elder sister. It could be said that Tan Xiu's appearance today not only saved her life, but also saved her elder sister's life. At this moment, upon seeing that Tan Xiu was about to leave, she hurriedly said, "Boss Wang, my work is done. Now, it's time for your company to sell the property. So, I'll take my leave first." Having said that, she didn't give Wang Shuigong any time to speak and hurriedly chased after Tan Xiu. Wang Shuigong was very frightened at the moment, but he was also very angry. He didn't know who was so vicious as to poison him, the guests he invited, and even the guests who bought the villa to death. He didn't care about Zhang Xinyue's departure, but Tan Xiu's departure made him more worried. "Please wait, Boss Tang." Wang Shuigong hurriedly chased after him and stopped Tan Xiu at the hall's entrance. Our friendship hasn't reached the point where I can risk my life for you, Boss Wang. Tan Xiu shook his head. It's obvious that someone wants to put you to death and even wants you to never be able to rise again. It's not appropriate for me to get involved in such a grudge. Listen to my advice. The business can continue, but you should find a safe place to hide. Boss Tang, I know I shouldn't have dragged you into this, but I can't avoid it. Wang Xuegong bitterly said. If the other party really wants to kill me, they'll definitely do everything they can to kill me. Tan Xiu said, if you're really afraid, then dispose of your business as fast as possible and run away with the cash. There's one thing I didn't want to tell you at first, but since your son is willing to take me to the Qingsheng sect, I'll kindly tell you this. Drunken dragon powder isn't something that ordinary people can refine. There must be a cultivator behind it. In addition, the cost of refining the drunken dragon powder was extremely high. It was difficult to measure even with money. Therefore, if the other party did not have a deep grudge against you, it was absolutely impossible for them to commit such a heinous poisoning act in today's society. Alright, I've said what I need to say. You're on your own now. A cultivator? Deep fear burst out from Wang Xuegong's eyes. He wouldn't be so afraid if it was an ordinary enemy who wanted to seek revenge against him. At worst, he could give up his business for the time being and hide with his big brother of the Qingsheng sect. But if it was a cultivator, the Qingsheng sect's people wouldn't be able to protect him even if he fled to the Qingsheng sect. He might even implicate the entire Qingsheng sect. Let's go to a faraway place. A firm look appeared on Wang Xuegong's face. He didn't like to be sloppy in dealing with people. Since the other party might be a cultivator, then he must go to a faraway place to save his life. Otherwise, he would lose everything if he lost his life, no matter how much money he had. Boss Tang, can I ask you a favor? You can rest assured that I'm not asking you to get involved in this matter. I just want you to take my son to the Qingsheng sect and hand him over to my big brother. You don't need to say it, I'll take him there, said Tan Xiu. Wang Tao, who followed him out, immediately shook his head and loudly said, I'm not leaving, Dad. Someone wants to harm us, so I must advance and retreat with you. Idiot! Wang Xuegong angrily shouted, if the other party is really a cultivator, you'll only be throwing your life away in vain even if you stay. Without you in Qinglin County, I'll have nothing to worry about. I'll deal with my family's business as fast as possible and gather as much money as possible before I flee this place. I'll naturally find a way to contact you and pick you up after I've settled down. Wang Tao still wanted to speak, but Tan Xiu stopped him. Your dad's right. You'll only be a burden to him and won't get any benefits if you stay, said Tan Xiu. Let's go. Let's go to the Qingsheng sect first and not affect your dad's work. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu and the others came to the parking lot. He immediately raised his brows when he saw Mo, Jin Shi, and the others waiting for him. He had just fed the soup to the chickens and sheep and was waiting for the result. He had secretly ordered Mo and the others to go to the kitchen to find the suspect who poisoned them. Now that they had all come back, it meant that the result was out. We caught two, boss. Mo quickly glanced at Wang Tao and Zhang Xinyue and then reported in a low voice. Where are they? Asked Tan Xiu. Mo pointed to the window and said, they're inside. They're both martial arts practitioners and can be regarded as experts in today's society. Tan Xiu nodded in response. He then came to the car's door in a few steps. After opening the door, he saw two middle-aged men tied up in the back seat. They were bleeding from their 7 apertures and were paralyzed in the car, losing their breath. They're dead. Mo muttered to himself in disbelief. Tan Xiu quickly checked the 2 men's bodies and finally concluded that they committed suicide by taking poison. However, they were tied up tightly, indicating that they had embedded the poison sacs in their dentures in advance. Once they were captured, they would bite the poison sacs and commit suicide. This was a big problem. Tan Xiu looked at the 2 corpses with a headache. He never thought that he would encounter such an unlucky thing after attending the opening ceremony of the villa complex that he was unwilling to attend. Behind him, Wang Tao and Zhang Xinyue looked at the 2 corpses in the car with fear written all over their faces. One of them was a second-generation rich kid, while the other was a small business owner. They had never seen such a murder case in reality. How could they ever see corpses bleeding from their 7 apertures? If it weren't for Tan Xiu, Mao, and the others, they would have run away in fear. Tan Xiu, what should we do now? Zhang Xinyue subconsciously grabbed Tan Xiu's arm and asked with a trembling voice. Tan Xiu gently patted the back of her hand and said, "Don't worry about it. It's just 2 nameless people who died. I'm afraid there's a mastermind behind this incident who hasn't shown himself yet. Anyways, I'll send Ao to send you back to the hotel first. You'll immediately leave Qinglin County after you meet up with your sister." Zhang Xinyue calmed herself down and suddenly realized something. She quickly took out her mobile phone and dialed Zhang Xinya's number. After talking with the other party for a while and learning that her sister was safe and sound, she hurriedly hung up the phone. "I can't go back to meet up with my sister now, Tan Xiu." Asked Tan Xiu, confused. "Today's incident is too strange. We still haven't figured out who the real target of the mastermind is until now," said Zhang Xinyue. "It's better to be safe than sorry. What if the person they want to kill is not Wang Xuegang but me? So I think it's better to follow you first." "Your sister?" Tan Xiu frowned. "Others don't know about our sister's situation. They won't keep their eyes on the hotel as long as I don't go back," said Zhang Xinyue. "I'll inform my sister to leave Qinglin County now and go back to Shanghai to wait for me. I want to go back to Sishinya," Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly said. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and nodded. "You're right. Let's do it this way. I'll send Gu Tao and Zhang Ju to escort this little girl to meet up with your sister, and then send them all the way to Shanghai. Since you're going to stay with me, it's good to use you as a distraction. However, we're going to enter the depths of Qingqing Mountain. Do you think your little body can withstand it?" Zhang Xinyue was very satisfied with Tan Xiu's arrangement and seriously said, "I can do it as long as you can." "All right, it's decided then," said Tan Xiu. "Gu Tao, Zhang Ju, you 2 take her and leave immediately. Don't stay in Qinglin County for a long time. Shui Sha, He Xiong, you 2 find a way to dispose of these 2 bodies and don't leave any traces." "Understood." The 4 cupped their fists and answered. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu's group of 5 stopped at the top of the outermost mountain peak of Qingqing Mountain. As Tan Xiu lit a cigarette and just took 2 puffs, 2 figures dashed over lightning fast and quickly arrived in front of Tan Xiu. "We've disposed of those 2 bodies, boss. There's absolutely no trace left," reported Shui Sha while cupping his fists. Tan Xiu nodded and looked at Zhang Xinyue and Wang Tao, who were panting at this time. Then, he said, "Let's rest here for the time being and continue our journey 20 minutes later. Tell me, Wang Tao, how long will it take for us to reach Qingqing Monastery?" Wang Tao panted and looked at the northern mountain range and said, "We'll reach Qingqing Monastery tomorrow evening at least if we follow this method. I know the way, but we may encounter danger on the way since there are many wild beasts in the deep mountains and forests." "Don't worry, ordinary wild beasts are no threat to us," said Tan Xiu indifferently. Recalling Tan Xiu's identity, Wang Tao nodded and said, "I'm not too worried since Big Brother Tang is with us. It's just that we didn't prepare water and food before we set off. I'm afraid we'll be in trouble if we get thirsty and hungry on the way." Tan Xiu shook his head with a smile and didn't speak anything. "It's the same for us whether we bring water and food or not," said Mo Au in a rough voice. "In my eyes, this deep mountain forest is full of things to fill our stomachs." Chapter 828. Mount Qingqing was surrounded by peaks that were evergreen all year round. The peaks were like city corridors, and the trees were verdant and lush. It enjoyed the reputation of Qingqing is the most secluded place in the world. Walking in the mountains, the road was bumpy. With the addition of 2 ordinary people, everyone's walking speed was even slower. When night fell, the roars of wild beasts could be heard from time to time. Wang Tao had entered the mountain many times to visit the Qingqing Monastery, so he was not worried about the situation in the mountain at night. However, Zhang Xinyue, who had lived in the metropolis since childhood and had never stayed in the deep mountains and forests, was extremely nervous and worried. Can you stop following me?" Tan Xiu went out from a narrow mountain path, while Zhang Xinyue followed closely behind him, as if she was afraid that Tan Xiu would leave her behind. Zhang Xinyue quickened her pace and grabbed Tan Xiu's arm with the help of the faint moonlight in the sky. While cautiously observing the surroundings, she nervously said, "Where are you going? Don't leave me." Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, "Please, I'm going to relieve myself. You stay with the others first, I'll be back soon." Ah, Zhang Xinyue blushed. Fortunately, it was night time and no one saw them. After he hurriedly ran back to Mo and the others, he picked up a fist-sized stone from the ground and held it tightly in his palm. After a while, Tan Xiu returned to the front of everyone and looked at the dark winding path ahead. He then said in a deep voice, "Let's continue our journey and strive to reach our destination as soon as possible." "Shall we take a break first, Big Brother Tang?" Wang Tao forced a smile. "It's too tiring to keep walking on the mountain road." Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he suddenly turned to look at Zhang Xinyue and said in a deep voice, "Promise me one thing." "What is it?" asked Zhang Xinyue, confused. Tan Xiu said, "No matter what you see when we enter the mountain this time, you must forget it after leaving Mount Qingqing. You can't mention what happened in Mount Qingqing to anyone." "Is there a need to keep it a secret? By the way, you only said that you were going to the Qingqing faction in Qingqing Mountain to do something. What is it exactly? Also, is the Qingqing sect like the ancient gangs?" Tan Xiu said, "You don't need to know about this for the time being. If you can promise me to keep it a secret, I'll take you on our journey. If you can't, I can let Jinshi send you back now." Zhang Xinyue hesitated and reluctantly said, "All right, I promise you." Tan Xiu nodded and quickly made a gesture to Mo. As Mo reached out and grabbed Wang Tao's shoulder, they quickly ran forward. At the same time, Tan Xiu also quickly wrapped his arm around Zhang Xinyue's slender waist and hurried forward. Ah, Zhang Xinyue was hugged by Tan Xiu. His manly aura made her heart beat faster. When the scenery on both sides of her flashed by, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Don't make a fuss. Hold on tight." Tan Xiu didn't stop and sped up again. A look of disbelief appeared on Zhang Xinyue's peerlessly beautiful face under the curtain of the night. The scenery that flashed past on both sides and the whistling sound of the wind in her ears caused her heart to be filled with shock. Superman? A martial arts master? Judging by her eyesight, Zhang Xinyue could tell that everyone was moving extremely fast at this time. She found that even the sprinting speed of the national track and field athletes was not as fast as Tan Xiu and Mo's group. For hours later, when Tan Xiu and the others stopped on a mountain peak, the blazing flames in front of them turned half of the sky red. In the mountain forest in the distance, there were countless roars of beasts and cries of birds. "What's that place ahead, Wang Tao?" Tan Xiu frowned and stared. His keen eyes had already seen some buildings in the raging flames. A bad premonition even faintly rose inside his heart. Wang Tao was dizzy and disoriented as he was put down by Mo. He retched a few times before he slowly looked up. When he saw the blazing flames ahead, he involuntarily exclaimed, "Heavens! That's the Qingqing sect's outer gym in front of us. Damn, how come there's a fire in the middle of the night? Who's there?" Suddenly, Mo shouted and his huge body suddenly pounced toward the bushes on the left. The moonlight shone through the gaps between the branches and leaves as his dagger flashed and pierced the left shoulder of an ambusher. "Enemy attack!" shouted the ambusher. A few ghostly figures flashed out from the surrounding bushes as Mo's iron pincer-like hand grabbed the ambusher's throat. In an instant, Mo retreated to Tan Xiu's side. He looked at the black-clothed man whose throat was clutched and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Hee. A few strange sounds came out of the black-clothed man's throat. In just a few seconds, 3 more black-clothed men appeared around him. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and his breathing rapidly weakened. In the end, he died in Mo's hands. Suicide by poison? Tan Xiu's eyes turned cold. It was hard for him to imagine who in today's society had such a powerful ability to train a group of death warriors. "Who the hell are you bastards?" asked the black-clothed man standing in front of Tan Xiu with a long saber in his hand. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and coldly snorted, I want to ask you who you are." What exactly happened in the Qingqing monastery? The black-clothed man sized up Tan Xiu and said in a deep voice, "Don't poke your nose into other people's business since you're not from the Qingqing monastery. Today, our leader is going to massacre the Qingqing monastery. Anyone who dares to join in will be buried with the Qingqing monastery." Massacre? The Qingqing monastery? Tan Xiu's expression changed. His figure flashed and appeared in front of the black-clothed man. He pinched the man's cheek and instantly released the long sword to pierce the chests of the other two men. Take the poison sac out of his mouth." "Affirmative." He quickly followed Tan Xiu's order and pulled out a fine silk thread from the black-clothed man's innermost teeth. A dark green poison sac the size of a grain of rice was pulled out by the silk thread. Tan Xiu casually sealed the black-clothed man's acupoints and coldly said, "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me who you are and why you want to massacre the Qingqing monastery?" The black-clothed man could clearly feel that he had lost control of his body. Even though he wanted to exert his strength, he couldn't even flick his fingers. However, the fear on his face only flashed for a moment before it disappeared. He then said in a deep voice, "You want to know the answer from my mouth? Dream on. You'll know who our leader is later. But when the time comes, you'll be in a state where you can neither live nor die." Tan Xiu flipped his hand and sent a stream of qi into the black-clothed man's body. He also cast a spell and sent it into the man's body at the same time. Then, he said, "Then I'll let you taste the feeling of living a life worse than death." A heart-wrenching and lung-splitting scream came out of the black-clothed man's mouth. He had lost control of his body and was trembling from the unimaginable pain. "I'm an expert in alchemy," Tan Xiu sneered. "Even a dying man can be pulled back from the gates of hell. I once calculated that it would take at least 7 days for a person to die in this kind of pain. But the medicine I concocted can let you live for another 3 days, which adds up to 10 days. So long as you don't want to answer my question, the next 10 days will be the most unbearable time for you." 10 days? The black-clothed man didn't want to endure it for even a second. The immense pain that seemed to come from his soul almost made his consciousness collapse. What was pain? What was living a life worse than death? It was the first time in his life that the black-clothed man truly felt it. Tan Xiu subconsciously took out a cigarette. After thinking about it, he flicked it to Jin Shi and said, "Blink your eyes a few times if you've thought it through and are willing to tell me the answer." "Yo, your eyes blink pretty fast. It seems your will is not that strong." Saying. He stretched out his hand and knocked on the black-clothed man's body a few times. When the man's trembling and the painful expression on his face subsided, he indifferently said, "Speak. Otherwise, I'll give you another chance in half an hour." The black-clothed man hurriedly said, "If I tell you, can you kill me immediately?" Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Men of death who are bent on seeking death? How interesting. Fine, I promise to give you a quick death." The black-clothed man relaxed and quickly said, "Our leader is a cultivator. I don't know who his master is, but he's an expert in using poison. They brought us to Mount Qingqing to take revenge on the Qingqing sect. I heard that the people of Qingqing school had killed 4 brothers of our 2 leaders." Revenge? Tan Xiu frowned. He didn't expect that he would be poisoned at the opening luncheon of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex for the sake of the red silk flower, and now the Qingqing sect was being sought for revenge. We have to protect the Qingqing sect, but the most important thing is to protect Wang Tao's uncle. Else, if the red silk flower falls into the hands of other cultivators, it will be very difficult for me to make a breakthrough in my cultivation in the near future. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and killed the black-clothed man with a palm strike. Then he immediately said in a deep voice, "Shuesha, He Xiong, you two stay here to protect their safety. We're going to check the situation." "I don't want to stay. I want to follow you." Zhang Xinyue's expression changed and she immediately shouted, "Big brother Tang, my uncle and cousin are in the Qingqing sect. I want to follow them too," said Wang Tao hurriedly. "You're all ordinary people, and you're not suitable to be involved in this kind of danger." Tan Xiu shook his head. "You just saw that we easily killed these 4 people, so it's more normal for people to die than chickens in this kind of danger." "What did you say?" Zhang Xinyue exclaimed in shock. You killed them? The night was too dark. Zhang Xinyue only saw the 4 people fall, but she didn't know that they were already dead. Don't forget your promise to me before, said Tan Xiu. No matter what happens in Mount Qingqing, you must forget it after you leave and keep your mouth shut. Having said that, he took Mo Ao, Jin Shi, and Xue Sha and bolted lightning fast toward the Qingqing monastery. After leaving Zhang Xinyue and Wang Tao's line of sight, the 4 of them soared into the air and arrived less than 100 meters away from the burning Qingqing monastery's outer hall in just a minute. Chapter 829. Standing in front of the raging fire, Tan Xiu's eyes seemed to be able to see the scene of the fierce battle before, as well as the figures of those people who wantonly set the fire. Murder and arson. It was a felony in today's society, and such things rarely happened. But Tan Xiu didn't expect that such things, which were often encountered in the immortal world, would actually happen in front of him. And it was because his enemies were seeking revenge. What should we do, boss? A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He had received cruel training since childhood and had risked his life for more than a decade in the flames of war. Encountering such a scene evoked his long-lost fighting desire. Find Wang Xuezhong. I want to see him dead or alive, said Tan Xiu. We've never seen Wang Xuezhong or even seen his photo. How are we supposed to find him? Tan Xiu faintly smiled and his figure instantly soared into the sky. As he flew over the burning dojo, he saw nearly 100 people surrounding an antique building in front of him. He didn't hesitate and instantly appeared on the highest point of the building. Who are you? Several shouts came from the nearly 100 people as 2 ghostly figures instantly appeared in midair, standing in the void and staring at Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu glanced at them. Although he was a bit surprised by their cultivation, he ignored them and looked at the courtyard below instead, shouting in a deep voice, "Who's Wang Xuezhong? Come out." As he spoke, Mo Ao's group of 3 also quickly appeared at Tan Xiu's side. At this moment, there were only a dozen Qingqing monastery experts left in the courtyard, all of them holding their weapons and looking around. The entire courtyard was shrouded by an array formation, but an invisible energy protected everyone inside. Among the dozens of people, a tall and straight old man with a youthful face and white hair had a burst of light in his eyes. His voice was like a thunderclap. He heard someone calling his name and heard the enemies outside questioning him. He even saw the people who appeared on the roof, as well as the 2 enemies standing in the air in front of the building. With just a few words, he immediately determined that the 4 people on the roof were definitely not on the enemy's side. The enemy was seeking revenge. He and the remaining dozen or so strongest experts of the Qingqing sect were almost in despair. But at this moment, his eyes shone brightly as if he saw a glimmer of hope. Taking 2 steps forward, Wang Xuezhong looked up at Tan Xiu and shouted, "I am Wang Xuezhong. May I know who you are?" Tan Xiu looked down at Wang Xuezhong and sized him up. He nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad. Fortunately, you are still alive. Otherwise, we would have to spend some effort. Tell me, is the red silk flower that your nephew gave you still in your hands?" "Red ribbon?" Wang Xuezhong frowned slightly, but still said, "It's in my hands." Tan Xiu asked, "You haven't used it yet?" Wang Xuezhong said, "No." Tan Xiu said with satisfaction, "Since you still have it, how about we make a deal?" Wang Xuezhong's expression shifted and he hurriedly asked, "What kind of deal do you want to make, mister?" "I'll help you get rid of these people in front of you, and you give me the red silk flower in return," said Tan Xiu. "What do you think of this deal?" Wang Xuezhong's eyes lit up and he resolutely said, "If you can really help our Qingqing sect solve the crisis and kill all these people, I'll definitely give you the red silk flower with both hands." Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and looked at the 2 men standing in the air in front of him, saying, "I don't know you, but I'm a bit worried that I'll have some dealings with you. Tell me your origin, else you'll really have to sleep in this Qingqing mountain today." The burly Bai Biao, with a scar on his cheek, coldly stared at Tan Xiu and said, "You don't deserve to know our origin, mister. I advise you to leave this place as soon as possible. Else, it won't be us who will sleep in this Qingqing mountain, but you. Since you don't know what's good for you, Then don't blame me for taking your lives. Tan Xiu shook his head. After all, there's a big gap between your lives and the red silk flower. As his voice faded away, Tan Xiu instantly took out 4 array discs and the 4 discs flew out. He instantly engraved the array pattern and pushed his hands forward, completing the 4 symbols array in just a second. After activating the 4 symbols array, Tan Xiu raised his right arm and shouted, "Draw the thunder and release the electricity." Suddenly, countless bolts of lightning appeared in the clear night sky. Without any warning, they struck towards the 2 people in the 4 beasts formation. Immediately after, a group of thunderballs emitting blue light quickly descended on the top of the 2 men's heads the moment the lightning bolts struck the 4 symbols array. Damn it! Bastard! Bai Zhen and Bai Biao's complexion greatly changed. Layers of flames appeared out of thin air as 2 fire dragons rushed out of the flames, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws to meet the lightning bolts. Boom! The dazzling explosion caused most of the people present to be temporarily blinded, and the deafening sound of the explosion made many people's ears buzz. There were nearly 100 murderous experts around the courtyard. Except for a dozen of them who had the foundation of cultivation and were able to stay safe and sound even though they were constantly retreating, the rest were shaken to the point that their blood and qi were boiling, causing them to spurt out blood and fall to the ground. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 figures flickered lightning fast and quickly dashed to the side of those who fell to the ground. As their swords streaked across the sky, the people who fell to the ground were slashed by the sword lights. Crack! The 4 symbols array was destroyed by the violent energy, and the effect of trapping Bai Biao and Bai Zhen disappeared. But as the 2 fire dragons were smashed by the lightning bolts, the explosion of the thunderballs directly bombarded the 2 brothers to the ground. Their bodies were dyed red with blood. Although the 2 men managed to save their lives, they lost their combat effectiveness due to serious injuries. Who the hell are you? After Bai Biao spurted out a few mouthfuls of blood, he angrily raised his head and roared. Tang Xiu sighed and clicked his tongue. I never thought that such a powerful attack wouldn't be able to kill you too. It seems you're only a step away from breaking through to the golden core stage, no? But it's a pity that you can only die today. You don't need to know who I am, because I'm not going to go to your so-called hell. You'll never see me again. Bai Zhen struggled to get up from the ground and roared, Sir, we brothers can find the red silk flower for you if you want it. We were too arrogant just now, I hope you don't mind us, sir. We brothers came to the Qingqing Monastery because we have a blood feud with you. Tan Xiu touched his chin and asked, Tell me, what kind of blood feud do you have with the Qingqing Monastery? Bai Zhen's eyes lit up and he loudly said, Senior, we used to be villagers in Qingqing Mountain and were recruited by the Qingqing Monastery to help them buy living supplies from the outside. They treated us 6 brothers very well at first and we were very satisfied. But a few years later, the Qingqing Monastery's supervisor in charge of living supplies kept deducting our wages and often bullied us by relying on their martial arts. Once, my younger brother, Bai Dong, went to the Qingqing Monastery to buy some oil, salt, soy sauce and vinegar and accidentally saw the Qingqing Monastery's people practicing martial arts. That bastard in charge of living supplies said that my brother secretly learned the Qingqing Monastery's martial arts and beat him half to death. The 5 of us went to find him to reason with him, but we were also beaten up. Since I was angry, I proposed not to help them buy living supplies in the future. I even said that I would tell others about the existence of the Qingqing Monastery out of anger. Because of that, the Qingqing Monastery's people wanted to kill us. We had a total of 6 brothers, and we were either blood brothers or cousins. In the end, they killed 4 of us. Only my 4th brother and I, Bai Biao, managed to escape and fell off the cliff. We were lucky enough to save our lives. All these years, we dragged out an ignoble existence and lived an ignoble life. We obtained a cultivation technique by chance and greatly improved our strength. Then we crossed the ocean and fled abroad, where we met our master, Tao Master Poison. All these years, the 2 of us brothers have been thinking about revenge all the time. Senior, do you think it's wrong for us to come to the Qingqing Monastery to take revenge? Tan Xiu fell into silence. He could understand this kind of hatred. Let alone them, If he were in their shoes, he would probably be more ruthless than them. Originally, he wanted to kill these people in front of him, but after hearing the whole story, he couldn't bring himself to do it. In the courtyard, the Qingcheng Monastery's abbot, Lin Tong, strode a few steps forward and sternly shouted, "You scoundrels are talking nonsense. That's pure slander. In the past, the 6 of you hid in our Qingcheng Monastery and secretly learned martial arts. You even stole our Qingcheng Monastery's ancient martial arts manuals, so we sent people to hunt you down and snatch back our martial arts manuals." Bullshit. Bai Zhen angrily cursed. "We brothers may be hunters, but we never had any extravagant hope of practicing martial arts. We never stole your Qingcheng Monastery's ancient martial arts manuals. It was your Qingcheng Monastery's steward who personally stuffed that ancient martial arts manual into my brother's arms when he killed him. Although I was running for my life at that time, I saw it clearly." What? The Qingcheng Monastery's experts in the courtyard glanced at each other in dismay. At that time, they only knew from the steward's report that the 6 fellows who usually helped the Qingcheng Monastery by daily necessities outside had stolen their Qingcheng Monastery's ancient martial arts manuals, so they sent people to hunt them down. How did it turn into a false accusation? Bai Zhen raised his hand to wipe the bloodstain on the corner of his mouth and angrily said, "I don't need to deceive you, senior, nor do I want to lie. The reason why that steward wanted to kill us was not entirely because of the threats I said when I was angry. The steward's daughter fell in love with my brother, which was the main reason why he wanted to get rid of us. At that time, he said that his daughter must at least marry a high-ranking disciple of the Qingcheng Monastery. Am I right? Mu Baiji." In an instant, the eyes of more than a dozen people in the courtyard were all focused on a middle-aged woman in a Taoist robe and holding a horsetail whisk. Tan Xiu followed everyone's gaze and also looked at the charming middle-aged woman. Chapter 830. A cold wind blew, causing Mu Baiji to shiver. Her expression was extremely complicated as her eyes kept wandering back and forth between Bai Zhen and Bai Biao 7 or 8 meters away. Tonight, the Qingcheng Monastery suffered a heavy blow. No one knew the whole story better than her. She was even more aware that the source of all this was actually her. The scenes of that year flashed before her eyes like a movie, making her feel distressed and difficult to breathe. The array that shrouded the courtyard had just been broken by Tan Xiu, Bai Zhen, and Bai Biao. She was also aware of one thing. This day next year would be the anniversary of her death. Now, she only hoped that the mysterious young man could protect the rest of the Qingcheng Monastery. Mu Baiji walked a few steps forward and her eyes shifted to Tan Xiu. Under everyone's watchful eyes, she knelt on the ground and silently kowtowed to Tan Xiu 3 times. Then she said, "Senior, they're right. Today's bad karma is all because of what happened that year. I'm willing to bear all the responsibility and use my life to make up for my father's mistake and resolve the enmity between them." Qingcheng Monastery's abbot Lin Tong's body shook and disbelief filled his eyes. The other Qingcheng Monastery's experts around him were dumbfounded and looked at Mu Baiji incredulously. It turned out to be true? The one who framed the 6 brothers back then was actually their Qingcheng Monastery's people? Lin Tong strode to the front of Mu Baiji and sternly shouted, "So to say, it was really your father who framed the 6 brothers back then? Was it really our Qingcheng Monastery's mistake that year?" "Yes," said Mu Baiji with a bitter smile. Lin Tong panted heavily and angrily said, "Then why didn't you tell us the truth back then? Why did you just watch our Qingcheng Monastery's people chase and kill those 6 innocent people?" "My father locked me up in advance when he made the mistake." Mu Baiji shook her head. "It was only until he released me that I learned about them. Hallmaster, I've been unmarried for so many years. Even when my father threatened me that he would die with everlasting regret if I didn't marry him, I didn't compromise. Don't tell me you still don't understand? The one I love is dead, and so is my heart. The only reason I'm still alive now is to apologize in front of the 3 pure Taoist ancestors, to atone for my father's crime." At the top of the pavilion, Tan Xiu had figured out the whole story. After shaking his head, he looked at Wang Xuezhong, the deputy abbey dean of Qingcheng Monastery, and said indifferently, Give me the red silk flower first. Wang Shuezhong quickly said, Senior, the red silk flower is not with me now. It's in my residence. Can you wait for a moment? I'll bring it to you with both hands as soon as I get it. Tan Xiu nodded and said, All, you three go with him. Yes. Mo and the other two nodded and followed behind Wang Shuezhong, who was riddled with wounds, as they quickly headed outside. Tan Xiu looked at Bai Real and Bai Biao and asked indifferently, How do you want to resolve this matter? Bai Zhen and Bai Biao glanced at each other. Then Bai Zhen shouted, Mu Baiji must die. She should have been buried with my brother long ago. However, the one who issued the order to hunt us down and kill us was Lin Tong, the head of the Qingqing sect. He must die too. We brothers may not be good people, but we also know that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. As long as the two of them commit suicide in front of us, the enmity between us and the Qingqing sect can be written off. What if I don't agree? Asked Tan Xiu calmly. With a resolute expression, Bai Real resolutely said, If Senior doesn't agree, then we brothers can only fight to the death. Even if we die here today, we won't let down our 4 dead brothers. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and slowly said, I received money from others to eliminate the calamity. Since I can get the red silk flower, then I must protect the people of the Qingqing sect. Now, I only need to ask you one thing, and you must answer it. Please ask, Senior. Bai Real seriously said. Was it you who sent someone to put the drunken dragon powder in the lunch at the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex? Asked Tan Xiu. Bai Real's expression changed. He hesitated for a moment before replying in a deep voice, That's right. We sent someone to do it. But, asked Tan Xiu. Do you know how many people will be poisoned to death if so many people eat the food? According to our investigation, the boss who developed the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex, Wang Shuegang, is the younger brother of the Qingqing sect's deputy master, Wang Shuezhong. Since we want to take revenge, we naturally have to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. As for those who have been implicated by Wang Shuegang, we can't care about them anymore. Good. Tan Xiu angrily retorted. You can't care about them anymore. The reason why you and your brothers were hunted down was because you were weak. But now, you sent someone to poison nearly 100 people, and it's also because they are just ordinary people. In your eyes, whoever is powerful can control the life and death of others, right? If that's the case, then I can't let you live today. Bai Real's expression changed. Never did he expect that Tan Xiu would get angry because of some ordinary people. After a moment of silence, he questioned, Senior, we are all cultivators, and ordinary people are like ants in our eyes. You're not a citizen of the state, are you? Why do you care about the life and death of those ants? We're all cultivators, yes, sneered Tan Xiu. But you're also like ants in my eyes. Also, you're wrong about one thing. I'm a citizen of the state, and I have the right to act first and report later. As his voice faded away, Tan Xiu instantly raised his arms. Lightning bolts appeared out of nowhere in the clouds in the sky as electric snakes slashed down toward Bai Real and Bai Biao. Outsiders can't bully this old man's disciple. An old voice came rolling from a distance as a large black net floated over from afar and directly enveloped the courtyard. Lightning bolts struck the black net and sparks splashed everywhere before disappearing. It followed closely behind. A doddering old man in a dark green robe with his hair combed into a bun appeared in front of Tan Xiu while stepping on a flying sword. Billowing green smoke spread out from his body and instantly enveloped everyone in the scene. Myriad Jiao Dragon Poison. A drop of transparent liquid silently stained Tan Xiu's skin the moment he held his breath to disperse the green smoke. The transparent liquid had a very strong penetrating power as it melted into Tan Xiu's clothes and skin. In just half a breath, it had already spread out inside Tan Xiu's body. Tan Xiu's complexion changed. A cold and bone-chilling gelatinous substance continuously spread out inside his body. It was a piercing pain and had a corrosive effect, making Tan Xiu feel as though his body was frozen and his muscles were about to be corroded. The senile old man laughed wildly and said, This myriad Jiao dragon poison is a nidin of a Jiao dragon that has been stored for thousands of years in the North Pole Spirit Spring's frigid spring. It took me 2 years to refine it. Cultivators below the golden core stage will die if they get hit by it. Even if you break through to the nascent soul stage, your strength will be greatly reduced, so you're dead for sure. A dark scepter appeared in the old man's hand out of thin air. With the rising flames in the sky, the surrounding green smoke was instantly ignited, turning the entire space into a sea of fire. Tan Xiu's pupils contracted. Layers of flames wrapped around him, and the dark scepter instantly attacked him. Judging from the aura exuded by the old man, he was a golden core stage powerhouse, at least at the middle stage of the golden core stage. So far, he was the most terrifying powerhouse Tan Xiu had ever encountered. Get lost. The long sword was unleashed again, and layers of sword shadows instantly shrouded his body. When sparks splashed, the black scepter that the old man was about to hit Tan Xiu's head was instantly smashed, and the swift and fierce sword chi left a few bloody wounds on the old man's chest. What? The old man's complexion greatly changed. After moving a few positions, he quickly retreated backward. Tan Xiu's body shook a few times, and his internal organs were almost frozen by the cold aura. What shocked him the most was that more than half of the gelatinous substance that entered his body quickly drilled into his Niwen palace. After he successfully forced the old man back, a roar suddenly exploded in his head. The brain was the Niwen, and the Niwen was the earth. There were 2 meridians that went down to the kidney essence. The essence was in the kidney, so it was called the essence, and flowed into the Niwen to form the brain. Then the transparent cold substance exploded, and in an instant, a monstrous heat wave was produced. The instantaneous alternation of cold and heat made Tan Xiu almost faint from the pain. Boom! At this moment, in the moment when Tan Xiu temporarily lost his perception of the outside world, a heavy hammer whizzed over and fiercely bombarded Tan Xiu's chest. In the midst of the blood spurting, Tan Xiu's body was bombarded like a cannonball. He flew backward for dozens of meters before heavily smashing into the antique building behind him. The moment they saw that Tan Xiu was blasted away, more than a dozen high-level members of the Qingqing sect quickly fled in all directions. Originally, Tan Xiu wanted to help them, but at this moment, a more powerful enemy came, and it was the master of Bai Zhen and Bai Biao. Although they wanted to help Tan Xiu, they also had the self-awareness that helping Tan Xiu would not only be of no use, but they would also lose their lives in vain. Want to escape? Dream on. Although Bai Zhen and Bai Biao were seriously injured and their combat effectiveness was almost at the freezing point, they forcibly used a forbidden technique at this moment. In just a dozen breaths, most of their injuries were healed, and they could also use 50 to 60% of their strength. And this strength was enough to kill all the remnants of the Qingqing sect. Puff! A long sword shot from the left, and at the moment when Bai Biao was about to punch a Qingqing sect expert to death, the sword directly pierced his neck and instantly beheaded him. Bastard! Bai Zhen's eyes were wide open. He gave up chasing the enemy and madly rushed to Bai Biao, holding him in his arms with both hands. At this moment, 2 ghostly figures appeared in front of him in an instant. Joint attack. Sword shadows swept out like a blooming lotus. Bai Zhen hurriedly tried to block, but his arms were shattered by the sword shadows. In the next moment, a silhouette appeared behind him and punched him hard in the back. Puff! Bai Zhen spurted blood wildly, and his heart was broken. Chapter 8:31. In the broken building, Tan Xiu had just propped himself up with his arms when he spat out a mouthful of blood. The extreme cold in his body instantly turned into extreme heat. Even though his internal organs had been tempered countless times, he still felt extremely uncomfortable. Poisoned. Tan Xiu quickly sealed his heart meridians with both hands. He did not expect the other party to have the cultivation of the golden core stage. He did not expect to fail miserably this time. He did not guard against the other party using poison. He had already guessed the other party's identity. He should be the master that the Bai brothers mentioned before. Dao Master Poison. This bit of poison isn't enough to kill me, but... Tan Xiu clenched his fists and looked at Dao Master Poison shooting toward him. His figure instantly dashed toward the open window on the opposite side and rushed out of the window almost in a flash. As the attic behind him shattered and fell to the ground, Tan Xiu's ghostly figure instantly disappeared into the distant forest. Annoyance flashed in Dao Master Poison's eyes. If that guy was flying in the sky, he believed that he would have been poisoned and severely injured, and that Tan Xiu would never be able to escape from his palm. But if that guy went into the deep mountains and forests, even if he had the cultivation of the middle stage of the Gold Core realm, it would be very difficult to find him. I have to capture him. The lightning manipulation formula and lightning manipulation formula he used just now are much stronger than the ones I have mastered. If I can interrogate him, my strength will definitely increase greatly in the future. Dao Master Poison gritted his teeth and quickly chased in the direction where Tan Xiu disappeared. Outside the courtyard. After Mo Ao and the other two killed by Zhen and by Biao, they immediately rushed into the courtyard. What caused their expressions to change was that the entire pavilion had been turned into ruins, and the figure of the boss had disappeared. There was definitely a powerful enemy that appeared just now. There were two explosive forces just now. One of them was from boss, and the other one was probably a powerful enemy that suddenly appeared, Mo Ao said in a deep voice. What should we do now? Asked Jinshi hurriedly. Boss was either chased and escaped, or chased away by a strong enemy. Mo Ao pondered for a moment and then said, let's meet up with Shueisha's team immediately and then head to the north to search. Since it's a strong enemy, we must gather together in order to possess greater power. Alright. On a distant mountain peak. With a worried look on her face, Zhang Xinyue gazed at the blazing flames in the north. On the other hand, Shueisha and He Xiong wore grim expressions as they vigilantly observed the surrounding situation. Who is it? All of a sudden, Shueisha let out a shout and instantly unleashed his flying sword. Mo Ao's figure appeared in front of Shueisha and said in a deep voice, it's us. Where is Wang Tao? Shueisha paced a few steps forward and said in a deep voice, some people from Qingqing Monastery just fled from the north. Wang Tao knows two of them, so he followed them. It's good that he's gone, said Mo Ao indifferently. How about this? Let's head north immediately and search for the whereabouts of the boss. The worry on Zhang Xinyue's face turned more intense after hearing Mo Ao's words. She then said, why don't you go? I'll only be a burden if I follow you. We brought you here, so we can't leave you in this dangerous place. Mo Ao shook his head. Let's go. I'll take you there. North of Qingqing Monastery. Tan Xiu shuttled back and forth in the mountain forest at lightning speed. As he ran, his face gradually turned red, blue veins throbbed on his forehead, and his eyes slowly turned bloodshot. He had suppressed the poison in his body, but what made him helpless was that Dao Master Poison's myriad flood dragon poison contained a very strong aphrodisiac. He could suppress the poison, but he couldn't force the strong aphrodisiac out of his body. Snakes were lascivious by nature. He wouldn't be afraid if it was just the aphrodisiac extracted from a snake's body. But the aphrodisiac extracted from a flood dragon's body was enough to drive him crazy given his current cultivation level. However, what drove him crazy the most was Dao Master Poison, who was hot on his heels. He was confident that he could kill Dao Master Poison if he wasn't poisoned or severely injured. But now, not only was he poisoned, but his internal organs had also been displaced, causing him to suffer from severe internal injuries. He had no other choice but to escape. At this time, he knew that his chance of winning was very small if he were to confront Dao Master Poison head-on. Even if he won, he would have to pay an extremely painful price. I'll remember this enmity. Tan Xiu gritted his teeth and sped up again. But as he sped up again, the aphrodisiac poison in his body broke out even faster. After fleeing for hundreds of kilometers and seeing that he was about to escape from Qingqing Monastery, Tan Xiu suddenly changed his direction of escape. Barely maintaining his sobriety made him realize that escaping from Qingqing Mountain in such a state was not a good thing. If he were to do something irrational outside, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, he took a big detour and dashed in the direction of Qingqing Monastery. Shit! Just as Tan Xiu was enduring the aphrodisiac poison and barely maintaining his sobriety, An overwhelming aura rushed over from the direction he was heading. I'll risk it all. Tan Xiu's figure instantly plunged into a bush. As he sealed off all his aura, he took out an invisibility talisman and activated it in his palm. Damn you, you bastard. If this old man catches you, I'll torture you and force you to tell me those 2 techniques. Dao Master Poison cursed as he moved lightning fast through the mountain forest. The distance between him and Tan Xiu was less than 100 meters, but he didn't find Tan Xiu at such a close distance. Instead, he quickly passed through and chased toward the north. Half a minute later, Tan Xiu put away the invisibility talisman and silently sprang out of the bush, fleeing toward Qingqing Monastery in the south. If he hadn't sensed Dao Master Poison's aura behind him, he wouldn't have kept fleeing to the north because Qingqing Monastery still had Mo Ao and the others there, while Zhang Xinya, Xue Sha, and the others were there to the south. He was worried that Dao Master Poison would kill them if he couldn't catch up with him. But now, it seemed that he didn't have to worry anymore. He only needed to meet up with them to escape to Qinglin County at the fastest speed. As long as he arrived at Qinglin County, even if he didn't ask anything, Mo Ao and the others could take him away and flee to other places. It's a pity that I don't have a sensory stone. Otherwise, I could use it to sense the existence of Mo Ao and the others and find them much easier. Feeling somewhat regretful, Tan Xiu sped up a lot again. Just as Tan Xiu was about to lose his mind and couldn't hold on any longer, several familiar auras suddenly appeared in front of him. In a flash, his spirit jolted and he dashed toward that direction lightning fast. Boss! The moment Mo Ao and the rest saw Tan Xiu's appearance, they all looked ecstatic. However, when they saw Tan Xiu's flushed complexion as well as the blood on his lips and clothes, the joy on their faces froze in an instant. Take me with you and run. Run as far as you can. Tan Xiu's blurred eyes saw Mo Ao's worried face in front of him. He hurriedly ordered before he instantly lost consciousness. Oh, what happened to boss? Jin Shi came to Tan Xiu's side and asked with an intense worry on his face. Mo Ao checked Tan Xiu's pulse and said in a deep voice, boss's internal injuries are very serious. We must find a safe place to stay as fast as possible and then find a way to heal him. Xue Sha, take Zhang Xinyue. We can't hide anymore and fly to the south. Understood. Several people replied and flew to the south on their flying swords. Xue Sha grabbed Zhang Xinyue's arm and made her feel dizzy. The strong wind whistled in her ears and she couldn't open her eyes due to the strong wind. Only after half a minute did she manage to open her eyes with difficulty. When she looked outside, she immediately shivered in fright. Heavens! Am I flying? No. I'm not flying. I'm being carried by Xue Sha. Zhang Xinyue was an atheist. She never believed in demons and ghosts, nor did she believe in the existence of immortals and spirits in this world. But at this moment, she pinched her waist hard and finally realized that she was definitely not dreaming. She was being carried and flying, and this was the real situation. Who are they? How can they? 10 minutes later, Mo Ao and the others flew over the ruins of Qingqing Monastery and the Sea of Fire. Suddenly, he felt his waist being touched. When he looked down, he was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. He saw that Boss Tan Xiu's hand was touching his crotch, moving up along it. Something's wrong. Mo Ao's complexion suddenly changed. He just felt that his boss's body was very hot, but he didn't notice anything unusual. But now, he keenly noticed that something was wrong with his boss. He had obviously lost his consciousness, but his subconscious was controlling his body and wanted to do something. Xue Sha was very close to Mo Ao with Zhang Xinyue. Upon hearing Mo Ao's cry, he immediately asked aloud, "What's wrong?" "If my guess is correct, boss is poisoned, and it's an aphrodisiac toxin," said Mo Ao hurriedly. What? Xue Sha's complexion greatly changed. He knew that his boss's cultivation was very high and ordinary aphrodisiac toxin had no effect on him. But if it was an extremely strong aphrodisiac toxin, it would definitely put his boss's life in danger if it wasn't removed as soon as possible. Zhang Xinyue also heard Mo Ao's words at this moment and a horrified expression appeared on her face. She knew how powerful the aphrodisiac toxin was because she once saw a female friend who was drugged. She could tell that she was unconscious and in pain. Shui Sha furrowed his brows and said aloud, Are you sure? Boss is really poisoned by the aphrodisiac toxin? I'm sure, said Mo firmly. Boss's body is very hot, and he's subconsciously touching my body. We must find a solution quickly. Let's speed up and try to get to Qinglin County as soon as possible, said Shui Sha hurriedly. Then we'll find a place with women and solve the problem in Boss's body as soon as possible. Chapter 8:32. There was a cool and gloomy atmosphere in the dark cave. As the toxins in Tan Xiu's body were completely expelled, his serious internal injuries also improved a bit. Only then did he slowly open his eyes. To his surprise, the sky outside had already darkened, and the cool breeze brought along the fragrance of food. Ha! Tan Xiu turned his head. When he saw Zhang Xinyue leaning against the mountain wall with a dazed look, an indescribable complex emotion suddenly emerged inside his heart. What should I do? He racked his brains but couldn't come up with any solution. He was not familiar with Zhang Xinyue and had only met her a few times. If it was Zhang Xinya who lost her chastity to him this time, Tan Xiu might be able to accept it. But he had no way to deal with Zhang Xinyue at all. Being responsible? Not to mention whether she would like it or not, Zhang Xinya would probably be in great pain if she knew what happened between him and Zhang Xinyue. Furthermore, it would not be beneficial for Zhang Xinyue to be responsible for her feelings and might even become a burden to her. You're awake? Zhang Xinyue woke up from her daze and found that Tan Xiu was looking at her with a complicated expression. An awkward expression immediately appeared on her face. But it was only a few seconds before she quickly adjusted herself and said, You don't need to take today's matter to heart. The reason why I did it was to repay you for saving my life. I know. Thank you. Tan Xiu floated up and said. Zhang Xinyue felt a bit bitter inside. She had lost the most important chastity of a woman, yet all she got in return was a word of thanks? She looked at Tan Xiu's slightly apologetic expression and shook her head. Forget it. You saved me and I saved you, so we're even. I hope you won't mention what happened today to anyone, and I naturally won't tell anyone about what happened in Qingqing Mountain. Let's just pretend that nothing happened after we leave this place. I promise you. Tan Xiu nodded and looked at Zhang Xinyue, whose body trembled a few times. Then he suddenly asked, You haven't eaten anything since yesterday? I haven't eaten anything since the night before yesterday, said Zhang Xinyue bitterly. Tan Xiu nodded without a word as he turned around and strode out of the cave. He then looked at Emma beside a boulder tens of meters away and asked in a deep voice, Have you brought something to eat? Emma flew over and respectfully said, Boss, we were worried that we might alarm the enemy last night by starting a fire in this mountain forest, so we bought some food from the county town. Are you hungry? I'll bring it to you now. Tang Xiu nodded in response. As Mo took the packed meals, he asked, Where's the red silk ribbon? Mo spread his hand and took out the blooming red silk flower from his interspatial ring. Then he said, We got the red silk flower from Wang Shuezhong last night and found an unexpected situation. The two fellows who sought revenge from the Qingqing faction were killed by us, but the people from the Qingqing faction also escaped. Did you find anything unusual when you went to Qinglin County? Asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. We heard the news that Wang Shuegang, the developer of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex, was killed along with several bodyguards around him. All of them had their heads chopped off and hung at the villa complex's gate. After inquiring about it, we heard that it was done by an old man in a green robe. Dao Master Poison? Tan Xiu's expression slightly changed as he nodded and said, Since Dao Master Poison hasn't left yet, I'm afraid he's hiding in some corner of Qinglin County, waiting for us to fall into his trap. We'll hide in this place for the next few days and leave after I've recovered from my injury. However, there's something I need you to do. Please tell me, boss, asked Mo. I'll give you a list of medicinal herbs later, said Tan Xiu. Take it to the Qinglin County Medicinal Herbs Market to buy them. If you can't find them in the Qinglin County Medicinal Herbs Market, then buy them elsewhere. Do remember to buy all the medicinal herbs I need within 3 days. Understood, replied Mo respectfully. When Tan Xiu returned to the cave, he saw that Zhang Xinyue was wearing his clothes, yet it couldn't block her beauty and charm. He sighed inwardly and took out a folding table and chair from his interspatial ring. He then put the lunchbox on the table and said, "Let's eat something first. I'm afraid we'll have to stay here for the next few days." Zhang Xinyue stared blankly at the table and chair that appeared out of nowhere in front of her and murmured, "Are you performing magic? Where did these tables and chairs come from?" "They're interspatial rings," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "That's what we cultivators use to store our stuff. I often sleep in the deep mountains and forests, so I always bring some daily necessities with me." Zhang Xinyue recalled that they could even fly, so she gradually felt relieved that Tan Xiu had some magical things. Having not eaten for 2 days, she was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. As she opened the lunchbox, the fragrant food and porridge wafted out with a warm smell. She hurriedly drank a few mouthfuls of porridge before wolfing down the food. Tan Xiu secretly found it funny looking at her appearance. However, he was also a bit hungry, so he also ate directly. Fortunately, Mo all bought a lot of food, enough for him and Zhang Xinyue to eat and drink to their heart's content. "I'm full now." After a while, Zhang Xinyue contentedly touched her slightly bulging belly. Having said that, she reached out to tidy up the leftovers and quickly got up, ready to throw them out. However, she staggered and let out a cry of pain. She instantly bent down and squatted directly on the ground. Tan Xiu quickly squatted beside her and held her arm, asking, "What happened? Are you hurt?" Except your big head ghost." Zhang Xinyue angrily turned her head and glared at Tan Xiu, scolding him. "What happened?" asked Tan Xiu with a confused expression. "Why do you look like you're in pain?" Zhang Xinyue angrily retorted. "Shut up." Tan Xiu was thoroughly confused by Zhang Xinyue. He racked his brain for a while and watched her carefully stand up. Only then did he realize the crux of the problem. He was a bit embarrassed because he realized that Zhang Xinyue should be having sex for the first time. After he unconsciously lost his virginity, she probably suffered a lot due to his lack of control over his strength and timing. "Send them out." Zhang Xinyue sat back on the chair and angrily said. Tan Xiu awkwardly touched his nose and then took the leftovers and quickly left the cave. After discarding these things in the hidden bushes, he found a thick tree nearby and cut it into wooden planks, quickly making a simple single bed. He then returned to the cave. Tan Xiu placed the simple single bed on the wall and then took out a pillow and bedding from his interspatial ring. After laying it out, he said, "We're staying here for the time being, so you'll sleep on the bed later. You don't have to worry about eating and drinking since I brought a lot of food with me. It's enough for us for a few days." Although Zhang Xinyue had seen many magical means of Tan Xiu, she still found it interesting. However, the relationship between them was a bit special, so she was too embarrassed to ask about it. A few days later, Tan Xiu took another holy healing pill and his injuries were finally healed. However, he was not in a hurry to leave. Although his purpose of coming to Qingqing Mountain had been achieved, there were still powerful enemies that he had yet to eliminate. In the past few days, Jinshi had sneaked into Qinglin County many times and obtained a lot of news from there. Among them, the recent homicide cases in Qinglin County were frequently reported, and the people who died tragically were almost all Qingqing Monastery's people. Although the entire county was under martial law to track down the green-robed murderer, there was no progress so far. "Boss, 6 of the Qingqing Monastery's people who escaped have died. I'm afraid it won't take long for the Qingqing Monastery's people to die if they keep dying like this," reported Jinshi with a bitter smile. "There's a cause and there's an effect," Tan Xiu indifferently said. "This is a mistake made by the Qingqing Monastery, and now it's just retribution. Originally, Wang Rui helped Viviani before, and she chose to join our everlasting feast hall, so we owe him a favor. It's a pity that we didn't see him that night. I'm afraid he's already dead." Speaking of which, Wang Rui is indeed a good material for cultivation, though his character is a bit exaggerated. Jin Shi sighed. It's a pity that he died in the battle that night, else he might have been able to completely calm down and achieve something in the future after the Qingqing Monastery went through such a great calamity. He's indeed a talent, but the Qingqing Monastery is his root. Tan Xiu chuckled. If the Qingqing Monastery's people aren't dead, we won't use him even if he's still alive. Don't let your imagination run wild. A talent who can't be used by us is not a real talent. Jin Shi grinned. Boss, your injury has been healed now, so when are we leaving? Not far away. Upon hearing it, Zhang Xinyue's expression moved and her ears pricked up. Her mood was very complicated. She didn't like Tan Xiu at first, even though Tan Xiu was indeed a good young talent. However, after the Qingqing Mountain incident, she even gave her chastity to Tan Xiu, causing her to have some special feelings for Tan Xiu. However, it was far from enough to say that this feeling was love. However, although Tan Xiu spent most of his time in cultivation these days, her eyes were always attracted to Tan Xiu. His every move and every word and deed made her care about him very much. Even Tan Xiu's apologetic and caring attitude toward her in his words and deeds made her feel unbelievably touched. Now, after hearing Jin Shi's question, she wanted to leave this remote mountain and old forest. But there was another emotion in her heart, one that she was reluctant to end the days she spent with Tan Xiu. What am I thinking? Zhang Xinyue suddenly sobered up and quickly explained to herself with other thoughts. The reason why she wanted to spend more time with Tan Xiu was definitely because of his endless magical means. Chapter 8:33. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a few deep puffs before saying, "Everything is ready except for the final push. We'll leave this place after all buys the herbs. I need to clean up that old geezer Dao Master poison. However, I've called Light and Dark to come here for the sake of safety." Light and Dark are coming here, boss? Asked Jin Shi in surprise. That's what I'm about to tell you. Tan Xiu nodded and said, I told Ao to inform them. They're expected to arrive in Qinglin County this evening. You're to quietly go to Qinglin County in the afternoon and wait for them in the hotel suite we booked last time. Then bring them here. Understood. Jin Shi nodded without a word and then dashed toward the distance. Not far away, Zhang Xinyue quickly came to Tan Xiu after consoling herself and asked, Can I go with you to Qinglin County? I haven't taken a bath for several days and I feel uncomfortable all over. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I can feel at ease if Jin Shi goes alone. But if you go with him and his identity is exposed, you're bound to fall into Dao Master Poison's hands. Just bear with it. We'll leave this place in 2 days at most. A disappointed look flashed in Zhang Xinyue's eyes as she bitterly said, This is the first time I haven't taken a bath for such a long time since I was a child. It's really uncomfortable. Also your clothes. Your coat is fat and big, but your underwear. Tan Xiu could only force a wry smile inwardly. His interspatial ring was full of his own clothes, so he never thought of bringing a few sets of girls' underwear. In such a situation, he didn't want Zhang Xinyue to take risks. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression moved and he hesitantly said, I can help you if you want to take a bath. Can I really take a bath? Asked Zhang Xinyue with a pleasant surprise. But what? Tan Xiu steeled his heart and said, I'll set up an array. But I want to be nearby when you take a bath. I can't be more than 10 meters away from you. Zhang Xinyue's pretty face blushed. But then she recalled that she and Tan Xiu already had intimate contact, so she simply said, I'm willing as long as you don't stare at me while I'm bathing. Tan Xiu secretly sighed and said, Let's go back to the cave. It's not very safe outside, and there's a chance that we'll be exposed after we set up the formation. Finished. He turned back to the cave and quickly arranged a auspicious rain array. Then he arranged a diversion array on the periphery and said, Take off your clothes and go inside. You have to bathe quickly, at least in 10 minutes, or there won't be any hot water left. Undress? Despite having a straightforward character, Zhang Xinyue was a bit bashful at the moment and hesitantly asked, Can you turn around? Tan Xiu took out toiletries from his interspatial ring and handed them to her, saying, Don't worry. As long as you stepped into the formation, the people outside would not be able to see what was happening inside. On the other hand, you'll be able to see what's happening outside from within the formation. Really? Zhang Xinyue hesitated to confirm. Tang Xiu didn't answer Zhang Xinyue but directly stepped into the array. To Zhang Xinyue's surprise, Tan Xiu took a few steps forward and his figure immediately disappeared from her sight as though he vanished into thin air. After a while, Tan Xiu came out of the formation and looked at Zhang Xinyue, saying, "Do you believe me now?" Zhang Xinyue nodded with satisfaction. After she stepped into the formation, her clothes were drenched by the rainwater that kept falling inside. The cold rainwater made her shiver and she hurriedly retreated. With an angry look on her face, she asked, "Didn't you say there's hot water inside? How come the rainwater inside is so cold?" "I told you to take off your clothes before you step inside," said Tan Xiu helplessly. "Do you see that line over there? You can take off your clothes as long as you step over that line. Then, you'll have to cross the second line to be drenched by the rainwater. After you cross the first line, you'll have to wait for more than 10 seconds before the rainwater turns hot." "What's the reason?" asked Zhang Xinyue curiously. "I used my magic power to wrap the auspicious rain array." Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, "The high temperature of the raging fire will cause the rainwater to heat up without destroying the formation. Forget it, you won't understand even if I tell you. Just hurry up if you want to take a bath. My magic power can't support it for too long." "All right." Zhang Xinyue stepped into the formation again. Although she was a bit hesitant when she took off her clothes, she chose to believe in Tan Xiu when she recalled that he had disappeared just now. When she stepped into the second line naked, she could clearly see Tan Xiu standing outside the formation, his hands forming seals as a layer of flame blazed outside the second line. She was shy. That was because when she was naked, Tan Xiu was standing 7 or 8 meters in front of her. She was shocked. It was because of the miraculous formation and the flame that suddenly shrouded the outside. The water temperature was heating up, and the biting cold finally disappeared. She then quickly washed her body with a bit of shyness. It could be said that this was the fastest and shyest bath she had ever had in her life. After all, taking a bath while looking at Tan Xiu standing 7 or 8 meters away from her was a stimulating feeling that made her heart surge and ripple. Several times. She couldn't help but recall the feeling of ecstasy that night, as well as the scene of their passionate collision. "Hurry up, I can still hold on for 2 more minutes." Tan Xiu's voice came from outside. Upon hearing his words, Zhang Xinyue quickened her washing speed. After more than a minute, she asked aloud, "I'm done with my bath, but will the water temperature suddenly turn cold when you're done? Do you still remember the 2 lines I told you?" Tan Xiu said, "Step out after you're done." "All right." After Zhang Xinyue stepped out and spoke to Tan Xiu, she suddenly realized that Tan Xiu only gave her some toiletries before taking a bath, but he didn't give her any clean clothes to change into. Tan Xiu's complexion was a bit pale. Using his magic power to light the fire consumed a lot of his energy. After he stopped casting the spell, he silently took out a set of clean clothes from his interspatial ring and put them on the bed in the cave. Then he said, "I'll leave the clothes here. I'll go out first," said the cave. Shui Sha and He Xiong were hiding in the bushes, observing the distance with a mini telescope. Sensing that someone was approaching, the duo immediately gestured Tang Xiu to keep quiet after seeing him. Then, Shui Sha leaned toward Tang Xiu and whispered, "Boss, it's about 450 meters in the 4 o'clock direction. It's the Qingqing Monastery's people. We've observed him. He's alone and he's hiding in the bushes over there to rest." "Where did he come from?" asked Tan Xiu with a frown. "From Qinglin County. It looks like he's heading to Qingqing Monastery," said Shui Sha. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, "You two stay here and protect Zhang Xinyue. I'll follow him later to see what he wants to do." "Will it be dangerous, boss?" asked Shui Sha worriedly. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I'll immediately flee if I encounter Dao Master Poison before Ao comes back. Don't worry. It won't be easy for Dao Master Poison to kill me as long as he doesn't use poison." 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu secretly tailed the Qingqing Monastery expert, who had already rested, and quietly rushed toward the direction of Qingqing Monastery's residence. After several hours of hurrying, he finally appeared near the Taoist temple that had stopped burning. The Qingqing Monastery man hid in the dark and observed for a while before he came out of the bushes. He knelt in front of the ruins of the Taoist temple and kowtowed a few times before rushing to the north. His movements were very light and vigilant. From time to time, he observed the movements in the surroundings. After coming to the ruins of the collapsed tallest building, he dashed toward the northwest and appeared in another courtyard half a minute later. After tailing him, Tan Xiu watched the Qingqing Monastery man enter a side room. He released his spiritual sense and was surprised to see that the man was holding a 1-meter-tall celadone vase with both hands and forcefully turning it. The originally tightly stitched wall slowly split open, revealing a spacious staircase leading downwards. Tan Xiu closely followed him. As the man went further down the staircase and the wall was about to close, Tan Xiu instantly rushed inside. Wang Feng. Several voices quickly came, followed by several figures appearing in front of the man. Tears overflowed from the eyes of the man called Wang Feng. He looked at the several men in front of him and hugged each of them. Then he bitterly said, "Our Qingqing Monastery is done for." Of the 64 people who were left on the surface, only 8 survived. For the sake of unnecessary sacrifices, the monastery master didn't let us open this dungeon or let you out. A middle-aged man hurriedly asked, "How is the monastery master?" "The monastery master is fine, but the deputy monastery master is dead," said Wang Feng. "I came back this time under the monastery master's order to quietly take you out and then escape as fast as possible." The middle-aged men were silent for a while. One of them slowly took out a bunch of keys and said, "I'm going to open the dungeon's door. We can't let them die here even if they made mistakes before." "Understood." They nodded silently. A few minutes later, as the doors of the 6 cells were opened, 6 men and women of the Qingqing Monastery who had committed mistakes and were imprisoned here quickly came out. Among them, the fastest one was a young man. Wang Rui? Tan Xiu hid in the corner of the staircase, but his spiritual sense could clearly see that the young man was Wang Rui. Wang Rui quickly ran to the front of them and hurriedly asked, "What's the situation up there? Has the enemy retreated?" "They haven't left yet, but they've been searching for our Qingqing Monastery's people in the vicinity of Qingqing Mountain," said Wang Feng bitterly. "Including me, only 8 of those who remained up there survived. The monastery master ordered all the Qingqing Monastery's survivors to seize the time to escape." Wang Rui's pupils shrunk. He suddenly grabbed the man's arms and asked, "What about my father? Where is he?" Wang Feng's expression turned dark as he said, "I'm sorry for your loss, Wang Ru. When the deputy monastery master fled to Qinglin County, the enemy caught up with him. He passed away." What? Wang Rui's body trembled and he was petrified on the spot. Chapter 8:34. Tan Xiu didn't expect that Wang Rui was still alive. Through his divine sense, he observed Wang Rui's pain. He sighed and walked out from the corner of the stairs. He had seen the tragedy of the Qingqing sect with his own eyes. Originally, he thought that he could save the remaining people of the Qingqing sect, but in the end, he was poisoned and seriously injured, so that nearly half of the remaining people of the Qingqing sect were killed. Who is it? There were a total of 10 people in the dungeon. Except for Wang Rui, the other 9 people all noticed Tan Xiu's figure and shouted loudly. Tan Xiu shook his head and sighed, "You don't need to be nervous. I have no malice toward you. It's a pity that Dao Master poisoned us before he attacked. Otherwise, I would have been able to guarantee the safety of the remaining people of Qingqing Monastery for the time being." "It's you?" Wang Feng was pleasantly surprised upon seeing Tang Xiu. He ran to Tang Xiu under everyone's watchful eyes, knelt on his knees and kowtowed a few times. Only then did he crawl up and gratefully said, "I never thought that you were still alive. If you hadn't saved us that night, I'm afraid that the remaining dozen of us would have died. I am Wang Feng of the Qingqing faction. You are Wang Feng's savior." Tan Xiu patted his shoulder and walked to the front of Wang Rui, helplessly saying, "The dead can't be resurrected. My condolences." You helped Viviani in the South China Sea, so I'll help you kill Dao Master Poison this time to return the favor. Wang Rui didn't expect to see Tan Xiu here, nor did he expect that the person who helped his Qingqing monastery that night was Tan Xiu. However, there was a hateful look in his eyes as he asked, "You mean, the person who killed my father and destroyed my Qingqing monastery is called Dao Master Poison?" "The one who destroyed your Qingqing sect was Dao Master Poison's disciple," said Tan Xiu. "It's also Dao Master Poison who is now hunting the Qingqing sect's members everywhere. Your father was not killed that night. He should have been found and killed by Dao Master Poison later. Wang Rui, put away your hatred. I've avenged you." Wang Rui was silent for a long while before he slowly asked, "Is that Dao Master Poison really that strong?" Tan Xiu said, "Invulnerable to swords and spears, flying in the sky and burrowing into the earth. He was so strong that many ordinary people couldn't even imagine it. Even if all the original members of your Qingqing sect were to join forces, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single slap from him." Plop. Wang Rui knelt in front of Tan Xiu and said word by word, "Tan Xiu, I know I don't have the ability to take revenge, but I hope you can take me with you when you kill Dao Master Poison. I want to see him die with my own eyes." Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, "I promise you. But what are you going to do next?" "If you go out rashly now and Dao Master Poison finds you, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape death." "Senior, are you still unable to beat Dao Master Poison?" asked Wang Feng. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I might be able to kill him if it's a real fight. However, the reason he was called Dao Master Poison was because he was proficient in poisons, and his method of poisoning was mysterious and unpredictable. I didn't know the poison he was using, so I fell for it easily. For example, that night, if he hadn't been poisoned first, it would have been possible for him to have protected the remaining people of your Qingqing sect." "What should we do then?" asked Wang Feng bitterly. "Don't worry. I've already sent people to find the herbs I need," said Tan Xiu. "As long as I can find all the herbs I need, I can refine the poison-dispelling pill. As long as I take the pill in advance, even if I can't be immune to all poisons, common poisons will no longer trouble me." "What herbs do you need, Senior?" asked Wang Feng quickly. "There are a lot of herbs stored in our Qingqing sect's underground warehouse. Maybe you can find what you need." Tan Xiu's expression shifted and he quickly told Wang Feng the herbs he needed. He didn't realize this problem before. The Qingqing sect was located in the depths of Qingqing Mountain and had a unique advantage when it came to gathering herbs. It wasn't strange for it to store a lot of precious herbs. Wang Feng said, "Senior, please come with us." Wang Feng said, "The underground warehouse is nearby. I know several kinds of herbs you just mentioned are stored there. Let's go." Tan Xiu didn't want to delay and directly left the dungeon with everyone. The Qingqing sect's underground warehouse was located in a high-walled courtyard in the northeast corner. In the past, it was the place where the Qingqing sect stored their treasures and was also a forbidden area in the eyes of most people. But now that the Qingqing sect had suffered a great disaster, the previous rules were no longer binding them. At the underground warehouse, aside from the spacious hall under the stairs, there were 6 storehouses on both sides of the corridor inside, where some precious treasures of the Qingqing sect were stored. The precious herbs were placed in the outermost 2 storehouses. As the door of the storehouse was opened, Tan Xiu stepped into the first room and saw 3 rows of shelves filled with all kinds of precious herbs. There were hundreds of them, and Tan Xiu could see more than a dozen of wild ginseng that was more than 500 years old. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu found some herbs he needed, but after checking all the herbs in the 2 storehouses, he found that he was still missing 2 kinds of herbs, namely the wild goose grass and the arbutus flower. Wang Rui, who had been following Tan Xiu, knew that there were still 2 kinds of medicinal herbs that had yet to be found. Then he said, "We've never heard of these 2 names, wild goose grass and arcane rose. Can you draw them? We'll look for them later." "No problem." Tan Xiu took out a pen and paper and quickly drew the 2 herbs. After watching for a while, Wang Rui frowned and said, "Isn't this arbutus flower a pitcher plant? It's just a very common weed. It's everywhere near the swamp in the west of Qingqing Mountain." "That's right, There are some in the dungeon I was locked up in before, but only a few of them. Pitcher plant? Tan Xiu forced a wry smile inwardly. Although he had read many books on herbs, he had never seen the introduction of the arbutus flower. It turned out that this herb was actually called pitcher plant on Earth. It must be noted that the arbutus flower could be refined into a medicinal liquid that could promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis, as well as strengthen the muscles and bones. It had a very good effect on ordinary people and cultivators. If it was an extremely old arbutus flower, it would even be beneficial to immortals. Earth. It was truly a huge treasure land. Tan Xiu sighed and asked, since the arbutus flower can be found, what about the wild goose grass? Do any of you know about this herb? No, I don't. Never heard of it. Everyone shook their heads with bitter expressions in their eyes. Since no one knows about it, then we can only wait and see, said Tan Xiu. I've already sent someone to buy it. Maybe we can find it. All right. At this moment, everyone could only pin their hopes on the people sent by Tan Xiu. As soon as Tan Xiu stepped out of the storehouse, he suddenly asked, are you selling these herbs from your Qingqing monastery? I can buy them at a high price if you're willing to sell them. Or, you can exchange them with something else. We won't sell them, but we can exchange them, said Wang Rui without hesitation. If you can exchange a cultivation technique with us, Tan Xiu, you can take away all the herbs in these 2 storehouses. Upon hearing this, the others immediately looked excited and nodded in agreement with Wang Rui. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he shook his head and said, cultivation techniques are no trifling matter and can't be easily taught to outsiders. However, if all of you really want to become stronger, then I can pass down some cultivation techniques to all of you. Even though it won't allow all of you to become cultivators that can soar through the sky and overturn oceans, it's still possible for all of you to improve your strengths by over 10 times. Alright. Wang Rui immediately agreed. Qinglin County. In the office of the County Public Security Bureau Chief, Zhu Honggua's brows were tightly knitted as he smoked a cigarette. Opposite him were the first and second leaders of the County Party Committee, as well as the captain of the Criminal Police Squad, Li Gangda. The second leader of the Municipal Party Committee was smoking cigarettes with a frown on his face. Everyone, we must think of a solution. The constant murder cases in Qinglin County have attracted the attention of the province. Furthermore, these murders have caused panic among the people and have seriously affected the stability of Qinglin County. If we can't apprehend the fierce beast and completely solve this matter, I'm afraid none of us here will have a good ending. Shao Kong, the second leader of the Municipal Party Committee, pinched the cigarette butt and spoke with a gloomy face. We've thought of all the solutions we can think of and done everything we can, said Zhu Honggua helplessly. But the culprit is obviously not an ordinary person. It's too difficult to apprehend him and bring him to justice. The higher-ups have already sent some people down, but we don't know when they will arrive, said Shao Kong. But we can't count on the higher-ups completely. We must at least wait for them to arrive before we can grasp the whereabouts of the culprit. You mean, we should do the intelligence work first? Asked Zhu Honggua. That's right. Shao Kong nodded. Knock, knock. The office's door was knocked as a middle-aged man in a police uniform pushed the door and quickly reported, Leaders, there are 2 women outside. They said that they were sent by the higher-ups. 2 women? Everyone's expression shifted. Shao Kong directly got up and quickly said, Take us to see them. A minute later, everyone saw the 2 women waiting in the hall outside. If Tan Xiu were here, he would definitely be able to recognize them at a glance. They were Electro-Lady and Aquababe. Ladies, I'm... Electro-Lady waved her hand to interrupt Shao Kong and straightforwardly said, We don't need to know who you are. Your task is very simple. Find a way to help us find the whereabouts of the culprit. We're responsible for capturing him or killing him. These are our IDs. After saying that, the 2 women took out their green books and gave them to Shao Kong to have a look. Shao Kong could only force a wry smile inwardly. The moment he saw the big characters on the green book, he knew how special the identities of these 2 women were. After returning the green book to the 2 women with a bit of respect, he said, We haven't been able to grasp the whereabouts of the culprit yet, but give us some time. I believe we can find him as soon as possible and then report the news to you. Take note of our contact information. Electrolady nodded and said, we'll look for him in Qinglin County before we get any information from you. If you find him, notify us using the contact information I gave you. Chapter 8:35. Outside the cave, Zhang Xinyue was full of worry. She kept looking in the direction of Qingqing Monastery, fearing that Tan Xiu would encounter danger after leaving this place. Beside her, Mo had brought back a lot of medicinal herbs, but it seemed that he was still missing 2 herbs. Is the Qingqing Monastery really that miserable? Zhang Xinyue had never cared about the Qingqing Monastery's affairs. She didn't ask about it even when a powerful enemy severely injured Tan Xiu. She knew that she didn't have the ability to help and was just a passerby. But now, she couldn't help but ask about it because she was worried about Tan Xiu. It's very miserable. Mo nodded. It's almost no different from the extermination of the monastery. Even the entire Qinglin County is now in a jittery atmosphere because that powerful enemy is looking for Qingqing Monastery's disciples everywhere. He's killing everyone he finds. Zhang Xinyue's face turned pale. Just as she was about to speak, her spirit suddenly jolted. She saw more than a dozen figures rushing over from the distance, and the one in the front was Tan Xiu, whom she was worried about. How's the medicinal herbs? Asked Tan Xiu immediately after he arrived. He was thinking about refining the poison-dispelling pill. Mo glanced at the Qingqing Monastery's disciples. He was slightly surprised when he saw Wang Rui and immediately replied, there are 2 medicinal herbs that I haven't found yet. I've been to the medicinal herb markets of several cities and also found some medicinal herb merchants who run medicinal herb businesses, but I still couldn't find them. Which 2 medicinal herbs? Asked Tan Xiu with furrowed brows. Arrowroot flower and golden needle leaf, answered Mo. Did you find the wild goose grass? Tan Xiu stared blankly and hurriedly asked. Yeah, I bought it from a herb merchant. Mo nodded. However, the price is a bit too high. A wild goose grass costs 180,000 yuan. Moreover, it's not negotiable. Let alone 180,000 yuan, it's worth it even if the price is 100 times more expensive, said Tan Xiu with satisfaction. Give me the wild goose grass first and keep the other herbs. Also, they are Qingqing Monastery's disciples who survived by luck. Take them to a nearby place. I need to hurry up and refine the poison-dispelling pill. Light and dark have arrived nearby, boss, said Mo. Tan Xiu nodded and said, tell them to be on standby. Subsequently, Tan Xiu set up a feng shui array in the cave to prevent the medicinal efficacy from leaking and being noticed by people nearby. The demon god spirit devourer cauldron was a top-grade cauldron for refining elixirs. Tan Xiu stayed in the cave for 2 days and only managed to refine a dozen poison-dispelling pills. The moment Tan Xiu stepped out of the cave, he shouted in a deep voice. Mo and the others quickly appeared, and even more than a dozen people from the Qingqing sect rushed over. All of them looked at Tan Xiu with anticipation in their eyes. You stay here and wait for my news, said Tan Xiu. Jin Shi and Xue Sha will leave with me, and so will Wang Ru. Wang Feng hurriedly said, Senior, we will also go with you. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, you're too weak. You'll just be a burden if you follow me. At that time, if a fight really breaks out between Dao Master Poison and me, it will be very difficult for me to protect you. So, except for Wang Rui, the rest of you stay here and wait for news. Zhang Xinyue knew that she couldn't help, so she grabbed Tan Xiu's arm and said with concern, the great ancestor once said that we should fight if we can, and run if we can't. As long as there's life, there's hope. Safety is the most important. Don't worry. Tan Xiu nodded. I know what to do. Qinglin County. The warm sun shone on the earth, and a gentle breeze blew past, blowing away the colorful flowers. Originally, this warm season was the most enjoyable time for people. But now, the sky above Qinglin County was filled with a murderous aura. Even the pedestrians on the streets were somewhat worried. County Public Security Bureau. Ligangda, the captain of the Municipal Criminal Police Unit, and Zhu Honghua, the director of the Qinglin County Public Security Bureau, were in the conference room discussing the coordination of the surveillance personnel. Bang! Bang! The conference room's door was knocked as a middle-aged policeman in uniform entered the room and quickly reported, "Two leaders, the higher-ups have sent someone down." Li Gongda and Zhu Honghua exchanged dismayed glances with a strange expression. However, since it was someone sent by the higher-ups, they naturally didn't dare to neglect it. After coming out of the conference room, they saw Tan Xiu, Jin Shi, Xue Sha, and Wang Rui outside. Divine Dr. Tang? Zhu Honghua looked surprised. He knew Tan Xiu. To be precise, Tan Xiu saved his life at the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex a few days ago. I heard that you're having a headache trying to catch Dao Master Poison, so I came to see the situation. Tan Xiu nodded. If you can tell me Dao Master Poison's whereabouts, I can either capture or kill him. Divine Dr. Tang, is the Dao Master Poison you're talking about that green-robed murderer? Asked Zhu Honghua, confused. Also, he's too powerful. Tan Xiu took out the green book and handed it to the two men, saying, "It's that old geezer. I know he's very powerful. Even if you use the military's power, you won't be able to do anything to him. But I can." Zhu Honghua's pupils suddenly shrunk after seeing the green book. Only at this moment did he truly realize how terrifying Tan Xiu was. To be able to become a special existence in the National Security Department, he was definitely not only excellent in medical skills, but also very good in doing business. Perhaps, he was also very powerful in martial arts. Li Gongda didn't know Tan Xiu, but the green book made him instinctively respect him. Upon seeing that Zhu Honghua knew Tan Xiu, he asked, "Director Zhu, do you know each other?" "Captain Li, do you still remember the divine Dr. Tang I told you about before? He's the one who saved nearly 100 lives in the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex," said Zhu Honghua. "He's the one in front of us. It's just that I didn't expect that divine Dr. Tang is also a national citizen." Li Gongda suddenly understood and said with deep veneration, "Thank you for coming here, divine Dr. Tang. We're currently looking for the criminal information you want, but the scope has been gradually narrowing down. If our judgment is correct, he should be lurking in the Dongqing district." "Dongqing district? Then let's go look for him first." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Remember to inform me promptly if you find the exact location of his hiding place in advance." "There's something I need to tell you, divine Dr. Tang," said Zhu Honghua. "Before you came here, the higher-ups also sent two people from your department. They are now in Qinglin County and are looking for the whereabouts of the murderer everywhere." "Who are they?" Tan Xiu was surprised. "One is called Electro Lady, and the other is Aqua Babe," said Zhu Honghua. A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he couldn't help laughing and said, "Ah, it turns out to be them. It seems that these murders in Qinglin County have alarmed the higher-ups. Alright, I got it. We'll take our leave first if there's nothing else." Dongqing District. Electro Lady and Aqua Babe stood on the roof of a 10-story residential building, quietly observing the surrounding situation with binoculars. They had received information from the Public Security Bureau that the murderer was likely to be hiding here, so they decided to wait for the murderer to expose his tracks. "Hee, it seems that there are a lot of people interested in this old man." Dao Master Poison appeared behind the two women out of thin air. He didn't immediately attack, but let out a strange smile as he observed the two women. There was a bit of lust in his eyes, as if he could strip off the two women's clothes with his eyes. Electro Lady and Aqua Babe's complexion drastically changed. They quickly turned around and were ready to fight. However, when they saw Dao Master Poison standing less than 10 meters away from them, the two women's hearts kept sinking. "A powerful enemy. He's very terrifying. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for the two of us to defeat him." The two women quickly exchanged glances and silently nodded after understanding each other's thoughts. Electro Lady took a step forward and coldly stared at Dao Master Poison, saying, "You're not an ordinary person. Why do you keep killing and creating panic in ordinary society? Do you dare to violate the national will of China?" "The national will?" Tao Master Poison sneered. What a big joke. This old man may have lived in China for hundreds of years, but I've never set foot in China for the latter half of my life. If it weren't for my two good-for-nothing disciples who came here, do you really think I'd want to come here? I don't care what your reason is, but I'll give you two choices now, said Electrolady. First, surrender at once. Second, leave China and never set foot in China's territory again. Tao Master Poison raised his hand to touch his chin and let out a strange smile. You want to threaten this old man with just two little babies? Actually, I won't hurt you even if you threaten me. As long as you obediently serve this old man well, I can forgive those little guys from Qingqing Monastery. However, this old man must find and kill that bastard brat who I severely injured and killed my two disciples. A cold light burst out from Electrolady's eyes as she angrily shouted, Old geezer, don't think you can do whatever you want here just because you're strong. The power controlled by the state is not something you can handle alone. You're overestimating yourself. Tao Master Poison shook his head and instantly bombarded Electrolady with his dragon head crutch. Boom! A flying sword instantly appeared in front of Electrolady. Sparks splashed in all directions as the dragon head crutch was instantly crushed. Tao Master Poison was forced to retreat several steps in succession before he could barely stabilize his figure. In front of Electrolady, clad in white, the handsome and unrestrained Light looked at Tao Master Poison with a faint smile and said, Those two may be overestimating themselves, but what if I join you? Tao Master Poison's face turned gloomy as he shouted, Who the hell are you? You're not qualified to know who I am, said Light with a smile. What you do know is that there's only one ending for you today, and that's to perish your soul. Chapter 8:36. Disdain was written all over Tao Master Poison's face, but a bit of greed flickered in his eyes as he stared at the flying sword in Light's hand. He had a discerning eye, and he'd once followed his master when he was young, and he'd seen the scene of a powerful cultivator controlling a sword to fly. Unfortunately, his master didn't have any inherited method to refine a flying sword, let alone a flying sword technique. He had been annoyed countless times that he didn't even have a flying sword magic tool despite being a cultivator. Brat, it's useless to talk big. Tao Master Poison reluctantly moved his eyes away from the flying sword and gently flicked his finger. Light, who had been vigilantly observing Tao Master Poison, was keenly aware of Tao Master Poison's flicking finger. He immediately retreated to the middle of Electrolady and Aquababe. As the flying sword hovered in the air, he grabbed the two women's shoulders with both hands and instantly stepped on the flying sword, flying toward Qingqing Mountain in the north. Wanna run? Tao Master Poison didn't expect Light to be so powerful that he could discover that he secretly released poisonous gas. As his ghostly figure instantly chased after him, Tao Master Poison was aghast to find that the guy in front of him could ride a flying sword very fast. Even though he was carrying two living people, his speed was still comparable to his limit. What a treasure! Tao Master Poison's greed grew more intense and he burst out with his fastest speed in hot pursuit. In just a dozen breaths, he had already chased out of the county and reached the top of the mountain on the outermost periphery of Qingqing Mountain. At the entrance of Qinglin County's Public Security Bureau, Tan Xiao suddenly looked up and his sharp eyes stared at the northeast sky. He clearly saw a few lightning-fast figures flying toward the north. It's Light with Electrolady and Aquababe, and Tao Master Poison is chasing them. Tan Xiao clenched his fists and handed the invisibility talismans to the trio. He then grabbed Wang Rui's shoulder and instantly soared into the sky, rushing in that direction. At the top of the mountain on the periphery of Qingqing Mountain, Light smilingly put down Electrolady and Aquababe, whose faces had drastically changed. Aquababe was fine and didn't lower her vigilance. She instantly pulled a few meters away from Light and flipped her hand to grab a dagger. Electrolady, on the other hand, stood blankly next to Light, looking at his handsome appearance with an intoxicated look in her eyes. Beauty, wake up. Light patted Electrolady's beautiful face with interest and said with a smile yet not a smile. Ah! As if awakened from a dream, Electrolady realized her love-struck appearance just now, and her beautiful face immediately flushed red. She staggered 2 steps back and then shyly touched the corner of her clothes. Dao Master Poison landed more than 10 meters away from the trio and took out a pair of black gloves from his bosom and quickly put them on. The speed of light was too fast. Even though he was confident in his own strength, he had no choice but to be cautious. "Kid, hand over the flying sword and I can spare your life," Light said with a faint smile. "Old man, you're quite fast in catching up. I didn't expect you to also be at the gold core stage, and at the middle stage of the gold core stage. No wonder my grandmaster was seriously injured by your poison when he was slightly careless. I admit that I might not be able to defeat you in a one-on-one fight, but I'm not the only one who wants to deal with you. If I'm not wrong, Grandmaster should be arriving soon." "Grandmaster?" Dao Master Poison's expression changed and he asked with a bewildered expression, "Who's your Grandmaster?" Light shook his head and smilingly said, "It seems you've lived for a long time and your IQ has deteriorated greatly. Not long ago, you poisoned my Grandmaster in Qingqing Monastery and even took the opportunity to sneak attack and injure him. Am I right?" Dao Master Poison's pupils shrunk and he fiercely shouted, "That young man is your Grandmaster? Are you kidding me? His strength is at most on par with yours. How could he be your Grandmaster?" Bush, bush, bush. Several figures instantly appeared in front of Dao Master Poison. Tan Xiu put down Wang Rui. His eyes flickered as he coldly snorted and said, "Why can't I be his Grandmaster if my strength is on par with his? It's really... But you've obviously been poisoned and severely injured by me. How come now?" Dao Master Poison was surprised. "How come you look as if nothing happened to you now?" Tan Xiu sneered. "Hee, how can I be someone's Grandmaster if I don't even have the means to force out the poison and heal myself? But you, Dao Master Poison, you actually dare to stay in Qingqing Mountain after provoking me. Do you really think you're invincible here?" Dao Master Poison secretly became vigilant. Through his observation, he found that 2 of the 3 people brought by Tan Xiu should be cultivators, but their strength should be very weak, whereas the other one seemed to be an ordinary person who had practiced some fancy but impractical martial arts. However, he was facing 2 powerful enemies at the Golden Core stage. One of them had a very strong magical power, while the other had a flying sword magic tool. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage if they were to fight. Poison. Dao Master Poison's most powerful killing move was the use of poison. Facing 2 powerful enemies in front of him, he instantly grabbed a jade gourd from his waist and pulled out the cork, causing 2 pitch-black poisonous wasps to fly out from inside. The 2 wasps didn't directly attack Tan Xiu and the others, but sprayed out 2 clouds of black mist. With a solemn expression, Tan Xiu flicked a poison-dispelling pill in front of Light and the other toward the cliff tens of meters away. Then he shouted in a deep voice, "Take this pill." Light swallowed the poison-dispelling pill without hesitation and respectfully said, "Grandmaster, since this disciple has arrived, why don't you let me deal with this old poison? I believe it will only take a few minutes at most to make him die without a burial place." "Don't take him lightly," said Tan Xiu indifferently. "Understood." Light looked happy and a jade flute instantly appeared in his hand. The flying sword hovered around him and a melodious flute melody floated out of the jade flute. A surprised look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. Listening to Light's flute melody, a smile appeared on his handsome face. He didn't expect that Gu Yen would actually teach the floating sound sword melody to Light. It must be noted that he was the one who created the floating sound sword melody and passed it to Gu Yen when she was still a teenager. Dao Master Poison violently retreated and stood in the air. Disbelief filled his eyes as he shouted in a deep voice, "My wasp venom has no effect on you? I forgot to tell you something." Tan Xiu sneered. "I wasted some time to refine a lot of poison-dispelling pills because you plotted and poisoned me in the Qingqing Monastery. Unless your wasp venom can kill a nascent soul stage expert, it won't have any effect on us." Poison-dispelling pill? Dao Master Poison's body trembled and the vigilance on his face turned thicker. He was an expert in using poison, and even cultivators at the golden core stage like him were afraid of his poison. However, he was also most worried about encountering powerful people with poison-dispelling pills. What should I do? Dao Master Poison began to consider whether to fight or flee. However, Light didn't give him much time to think. Along with the flute melody, the flying sword hovering around him was like a soldier receiving the command of its commander. It transformed into layers of overlapping sword images that blotted out the sky and rushed toward Dao Master Poison. The imperial sword art could be controlled with spiritual sense. However, the floating sound sword melody had higher requirements. Along with the rhythm, the flying sword seemed to transform into thousands of soldiers and horses that strangled the enemy in a special formation. This is? Dao Master Poison's heart turned cold and he violently retreated backward. Even though his cultivation was a level higher than Light's, he didn't dare to confront such an attack head-on. However, at this moment, layers of ripples suddenly appeared in the void tens of meters behind him. Dao Master Poison focused most of his attention on the front. Although he noticed the fluctuations in the air behind him, it only gave rise to a trace of doubt. However, being cautious by nature, he still dodged to the side as he retreated. Just this time, a flying sword appeared in the air and pierced through his chest, allowing him to avoid being stabbed in the heart. Damn it! Never in his wildest dreams did Dao Master Poison imagine that there was someone in this world who could hide their body in the air. The moment the abruptly appearing flying sword pierced his body, he saw a phantom suddenly appear and control the flying sword to unleash a swift and fierce attack. One-eyed dragon, get out here and save me. Dao Master Poison was scared because the black-robed phantom controlled the flying sword and sealed off all his escape routes after he was hit by this move. The overwhelming sword images in front of him also arrived in front of him. He was well aware that he would probably meet the Grim Reaper if no one came to his rescue. What a sinister pair of kids! In the nearby mountain forest, a figure flashed lightning fast and fiercely slashed out with a bronze axe. The flying sword and the bronze axe, controlled by the flute melody, collided. To Tan Xiu's and Light's surprise, the flying sword didn't smash the bronze axe. Instead, under the tremendous force, the overlapping sword images dissipated and the flying sword itself flew backward toward Light. The black-robed dark controlled the flying sword and left more than a dozen bloody wounds on Dao Master Poison's body. Then, she dashed toward the mountain forest below and disappeared in nearly half a second into the dense thicket below. Tan Xiu looked at the old man who saved Dao Master Poison's life. The old man's white hair was draped over his shoulders, and he wore a gray Chinese tunic suit. One of his eyes was tied with a belt, and he was really a one-eyed blind man. You're with him? One-eyed dragon let out a hollow laugh and sighed. Sure enough, the new generation really surpasses the old, and the new generation is stronger than the previous one. This old man really admires you kids. But who's with this old poison? This old man just followed this old poison to collect his debt, but I didn't expect to run into this mess. Old geezer, I'm very curious as to what kind of debt this Dao Master Poison owes you for you to risk your life to save him. Tan Xiu sneered. Today's matter is already a dead end. You rashly barged in, so you can't just stay out of it. One-eyed dragon couldn't help laughing and said, Don't be so arrogant, kiddo. This old man may not be your match, but you can't stop me if I want to escape. Even I don't think there are more than 5 people in this world who can stop me. Chapter 837. One-eyed dragon was full of confidence, and his arrogance couldn't help but be revealed in his speech and behavior. There was even a bit of contempt and ridicule in his eyes when he looked at Tan Xiu. Are you sure? Asked Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Of course I'm sure. One-eyed dragon proudly replied, There are only a handful of people in this world who can stop me, but you're definitely not one of them. It's useless if you only know how to talk big, kid. If you really have the means, why would you wait for me to appear? Tan Xiu gently raised his hand and 8 array discs appeared in his hand out of thin air. His figure flashed and his figure flickered again and again. The moment he tossed the 8 array discs into the air, His arms danced and his fingers drew array patterns in the air. In just a few seconds, he had successfully set up the 8-division dragon trap array. With the input of his transcendence energy, the array was completely activated. Tang Xiu returned to his original spot and grinned while stroking his chin with his fingers. Well, I want to see how you're going to escape. 10 minutes. That should be enough, right? If you can break this array in 10 minutes, I'll spare your life, old blind man. But if you can't break it and escape in 10 minutes, then don't blame me for being ruthless. I'll scatter your souls and make you unable to reincarnate forever. An array? One-eyed dragon and the scarred Dao Master Poison exchanged glances. The pores all over their bodies stood on end at this moment. They might be cultivators, but it could be said that they knew nothing about arrays. Alchemy. The two of them could barely understand a bit, but the pills they refined were very ordinary. However, they were completely clueless when it came to weapon refinement and array formations, which were skills that cultivators should have mastered. Even the cultivators they had known for hundreds of years had never heard of any of them who knew how to refine artifacts, let alone arrays with such magical effects. You, who the hell are you? One-eyed dragon, who was trapped in the array, shouted with a pale complexion through the array's energy shield. Tan Xiu indifferently said, "If you want to know who I am, then break my temporary array formation if you have the ability. Of course, even if you break this array formation, something more interesting will happen later. In short, you will be miserable today, extremely miserable." Finished. He no longer paid attention to them and turned to look at Electrolady and Aquababe, who were dumbfounded, and said with a faint smile, "I trust you two have been well since we last met, right?" Aquababe's lips squirmed and she forced a smile. "We wouldn't have needed to rush here if we knew you were here, Mr. Tang. Moreover, we didn't know that they were cultivators before we were sent here, and their strength was so terrifying. Come to think of it, you've saved us again. Speaking of which, we're also colleagues, so it's natural for us to help each other." Tan Xiu lightly smiled. "However, leave the matters here to me. If the two of you have other matters to attend to, you may leave first." "We can't go back immediately before dealing with them, Mr. Tang," said Aquababe hesitantly. "Also, I know you don't like trouble. After we deal with the two of them, we'll deal with the aftermath." "All right." Tan Xiu nodded. Electrolady was in a daze the moment Tan Xiu appeared. Never did she expect that Tan Xiu would appear here, nor did she expect that Tan Xiu would be acquainted with that super handsome guy who made her heart beat faster. She sobered up. With a complicated expression, Electrolady pointed at Light and asked, "Mr. Tang, is he your grand disciple?" Tan Xiu glanced at the handsome and elegant Light in white and smilingly said, "That's right. According to seniority, he's indeed my grand disciple. What's wrong? You've taken a fancy to this grand disciple of mine?" Electrolady's pretty face blushed, but she still replied with all seriousness, "You must be joking, Mr. Tang. But he's indeed very good, and I like him very much. If you can facilitate our relationship, Mr. Tang, you'll be my benefactor in the future." "Ha!" Tan Xiu burst into laughter, while Light was at a loss whether to cry or laugh as he kept shaking his head. Tan Xiu chuckled and said, "Everyone loves beauty, and this grand disciple of mine is indeed very good. However, you still need to solve the matters between men and women, so I won't meddle in it. Light, you've messed up this beauty's heart, so you must comfort her well and don't hurt her." "Ha! Hee hee." Ripples appeared in the air a few meters away from Tan Xiu. Dark, who was clad in a black robe with her flowing black hair, appeared. She approached Tan Xiu in a gentle manner and pulled Tan Xiu's arm, saying with a charming smile, "Grand Master, my big brother really should get married and have children. He definitely won't dare to disobey you as a matchmaker." "Dark!" Light angrily shouted. Tan Xiu glanced at the masked Dark in surprise. He shook his head and couldn't help but chuckle. "I do want to be a matchmaker for your big brother, but who knows what kind of woman he likes. You, on the other hand, can't always hide in the dark and live in the future. Men and women should get married, so you can tell me secretly if you have someone you like." Dark's eyes froze and immediately rebuked, "What nonsense are you talking about, Grand Master? I won't marry unless someone is as great as you, Grandmaster. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, there aren't many men as great as me. I'm afraid I'm a rarity even in the immortal world. You're asking for too much. Just lower it a bit. Pa. Dark couldn't help but burst into laughter. Her figure flickered and disappeared in the air. North of Qinglin County. On the roof of a 10-story building, Li Gangde and Zhu Hongwa stood side by side with binoculars, watching the sky above Qingqing Mountain in the distance. The two of them could clearly see the dazzling golden energy shield. They could even see Tang Xiu and the others on the hilltop. I never believed in ghosts and gods before, Captain Li. But now I do. Immortals and gods really exist in this world. Zhu Hongwa sighed with a forced smile. Li Gangde nodded and said, I once knew that there are ability users in this world, but these people are very terrifying and belong to a special department that specializes in handling special cases in the country. But I didn't expect that there are people who are more powerful than ability users. If my guess is correct, they are the legendary cultivators who pursue the ethereal and illusory realm of becoming immortals and seeking the Tao. That's just a rumor. How can there be such people in this world? Zhu Hongwa was surprised. Li Gangde put down the binoculars and pointed to the mountain in the north. Words are no proof, but seeing is believing. Don't tell me they can't convince you? Zhu Hongwa opened his mouth and immediately nodded with a forced smile. Yeah, I believe them. We couldn't catch the murderers before, but they turned out to be not ordinary humans, but cultivators with magical means. Li Gangde laughed. Now that Divine Dr. Tang and the others have taken action, we can finally feel relieved. I believe our superiors won't blame us anymore. That's right. Zhu Hongwa said, with so many murders in Qinglin County, I realized that I might not be able to keep my job anymore. But who would have thought that things would take a turn for the better and the murderers turned out to be such people? If the superiors know about this, I'm sure they won't give me the title of dereliction of duty anymore. Don't worry. Li Gangde nodded. I'm actually very grateful to Divine Dr. Tang. He saved my life before, and now he's caught the criminals, said Zhu Hongwa. If our country can have more immortals and gods like him, I'm afraid it'll be much more peaceful. Do you worship him? Li Gangde asked with a smile. Worship, gratitude, and respect, said Zhu Hongwa with a straight face. Li Gangde laughed and picked up the binoculars again. On the mountain peak, the 8-sex dragon trap array was constantly absorbing energy from all directions to stabilize the array's operation. Its function was very simple, to trap the enemy. Inside the array, Tao Master Poison and One-Eyed Dragon crazily attacked the energy shield formed by the array, yet they couldn't break it. One-Eyed Dragon, we can't go on like this. This array can isolate the heaven and earth spiritual energy. We're constantly consuming it, but there's no way to replenish it. If we can't break this array, we'll be exhausted to death here. Tao Master Poison's wounds were no longer bleeding, but his severe injuries made him extremely irritable. I know what you said, but I can't think of any other way to break this array apart from that, said One-Eyed Dragon bitterly. You mean the soul-slaying nail? Tao Master Poison was startled. The one-eyed man said helplessly, Yeah. One-Eyed Dragon helplessly said, That damned thing. I've been sealing it inside my body all these years, trying to subdue it, but it's not willing to be used by me until now. If I force myself to use it, it will no longer be under my control once this array is broken. I'll never be able to use it again. Tao Master Poison was silent for half a minute before he bitterly said, Just use it. Even if we lose a treasure, it's better than all of us being trapped here. I'll give you that poison dragon if we can escape and go back. A golden thread snake? Asked One-Eyed Dragon in surprise. This is a golden thread snake that this old man has been cultivating for 180 years. Tao Master Poison nodded and said, Although there's no hope for it to transform into a flood dragon in this lifetime, it will probably not be inferior to a flood dragon once it really grows up. One-Eyed Dragon squinted his eyes and asked in a deep voice, Are you serious? Yes, but I'll write off all the debts I owed you before, said Tao Master Poison. No problem. The one-eyed dragon replied with satisfaction. Then, he sat down cross-legged in the air and clasped his hands together before his chest. The moment he separated them, a dense mist slowly formed above his head. A pitch-black nail, half a foot long, with countless strange runes engraved on it, appeared within the mist. Break! One-eyed dragon floated up and fiercely waved his arms, manipulating the soul-slaying nail to bombard the golden energy shield. Following a series of cracking sounds, a layer of cracks appeared on the golden energy shield, spreading like a spider web. In just a few seconds, the formation was completely broken, and the 8 formation discs exploded in their positions. Buzz! The pitch-black soul-slaying nail suddenly burst out with a surging aura and instantly broke away from One-Eyed Dragon's control. Chapter 8:38. Tan Xiu's eyes lit up the moment the soul-slaying spike appeared. He didn't care even if the 8-division dragon trap array was broken. His figure flickered lightning fast and chased after the soul-slaying spike. At the same time, he cast a series of hand seals and instantly wrapped the soul-slaying spike with surging primal chaos force. Absorb! Tan Xiu stepped on the void and changed his hand seals. The primal chaos force wrapped the struggling soul-slaying spike and abruptly pulled it in front of him. Impossible! What a strong aura! One-Eyed Dragon and Dao Master Poison's complexion drastically changed and horror burst out from their eyes. Their bodies stiffened in midair as though they were cast with a body-freezing spell. Tan Xiu didn't even look at them. He bit his finger and a drop of blood instantly fused into the soul-slaying spike. In almost the blink of an eye, the struggling soul-slaying spike was absorbed into Tan Xiu's body. Light, Dao Master Poison, I'll leave this one-eyed dragon to you. With a bit of excitement, Tan Xiu's eyes finally fell on One-Eyed Dragon and Dao Master Poison. As his figure flickered and appeared in front of them, he instantly unleashed the divine sword. 100-meter-long sword beam streaked across the sky and engulfed the two in an instant. Block it! One-Eyed Dragon screamed. His surging true essence force condensed into a saber and fiercely slashed at the sword beam. At the same time, he released his golden core. The dazzling golden core burst out a dazzling brilliance and bombarded the sword beam along with the saber beam formed from true essence. Dao Master Poison roared and pulled out a broken black flag from his bosom. As he crazily instilled his true essence, the palm-sized black flag rapidly expanded and wrapped him in it in the blink of an eye. In front of his other hand, a dark green light ball instantly condensed and was thrown toward the sword beam. Boom, boom, boom. The divine sword was unstoppable. With irresistible force, it smashed the saber beam condensed from true essence, split the ping-pong ball-sized golden core, split the dark green light ball, and finally bombarded One-Eyed Dragon and Dao Master Poison. Puff, arg, One-Eyed Dragon spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Even his ears, eyes, and nostrils were overflowing with blood. His entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and his spirit quickly became dispirited. His body flew backward for nearly 100 meters, and he barely managed to control his true chi to dash in front of the golden core that had been sent flying. He could clearly see that the golden core, which was originally glowing brightly, was now covered with dense cracks, as if it could completely shatter at any time. Return. The golden core, which had become dim and lusterless, was swallowed back into the One-Eyed Dragon's mouth. Compared to One-Eyed Dragon, Dao Master Poison appeared to be in a much more miserable state. The dark green light ball he threw was split and scattered, the black flag wrapped around his body was torn apart, and the sword beam left a bloody wound of more than 10 centimeters long on his body. One could even clearly see several broken bones and indistinct internal organs in the wound. Myriad swords returned to origin. Tan Xiu licked his lips and controlled the divine sword to transform into countless sword images that blotted out the sky and pressed down on One-Eyed Dragon. Dozens of sword images even shot toward One-Eyed Dragon's surroundings in a roundabout manner, blocking all possible escape routes for One-Eyed Dragon. One-Eyed Dragon was scared out of his wits. At this moment, he clearly realized that the long sword was absolutely a terrifying divine weapon. Even a magic tool couldn't possibly burst out with such power. He regretted that he didn't immediately escape when Tan Xiu took away the soul-slaying spike. "Spare my life and I'll be loyal to you for 100 years." At the moment of life and death crisis, One-Eyed Dragon shouted loudly. Disdain flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes and he proudly shouted, "I have enough subordinates. You're just an old geezer who already has half a foot in hell's door. I don't want you." While speaking, his fingers moved and the lightning attraction art was cast. Lightning bolts as thick as an arm fell from the sky, shuttling through the gaps of the sword images and bombarding One-Eyed Dragon. Thousands of arrows pierced his heart and lightning bolts struck his body. One-Eyed Dragon let out a miserable howl as his body turned into a charred sieve. Just as the cracked golden core shot into the distance, a beam of light shot out from the divine sword and accurately hit the golden core, thoroughly splitting it into several pieces. On the other side, the white-robed light controlled the flying sword and continuously launched attacks at Dao Master Poison. Although his cultivation was not as high as Dao Master Poison's and was only at the early stage of Golden Core, Dao Master Poison was severely injured and could only unleash 60% of his strength, so he was already tottering under Light's fierce attacks. Puff! Although Dao Master Poison knew that there was another ruthless dark hiding in the dark, he was already on the verge of collapsing in the face of Light's fierce attacks. He clearly sensed that someone was sneaking up on him from behind, but he still couldn't separate his body to block it. He didn't even have the chance to dodge and was pierced by the flying sword from the back. Light's attacks came to a halt, but Dark, who had revealed herself, was still attacking frantically. The flying sword tore Dao Master Poison's body and picked up his golden core from his body. However, just as she was about to grab the golden core, two poisonous wasps suddenly appeared and shot toward Dark's neck from the left and right. Danger! Dark was an expert in sneak attacks and assassinations, but she realized that she couldn't avoid the sudden appearance of these two poisonous wasps. Just as she controlled the flying sword to block the left side of her neck, the poisonous wasp on the right side was already less than half a meter away from her. Puff! A dazzling light flashed and the poisonous wasp that was about to bite the right side of Dark's neck was suddenly pierced by a silver needle, narrowly avoiding Dark's neck. Dark looked at Tan Xiu with lingering fear. She then grabbed the golden core and appeared in front of Tan Xiu lightning fast. She then gratefully said, "Thank you for saving me, Grand Master." Dao Master Poison is an expert at the mid-stage of Golden Core, after all. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not surprising that he has a few things with terrifying lethality. Be more careful in the future. Even if it's an unremarkable nobody, he or she can release a terrifying killing move that can make you fail miserably. The path of a cultivator is full of ups and downs and crises. You can only overcome all obstacles and always be vigilant to live longer, go further, and become stronger. Will sincerely follow Grand Master's teachings." Light and Dark cupped their fists at the same time. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "I'll bestow upon you the surname Tang from now on. Are you willing to accept it?" Bestow a surname? Light and Dark exchanged glances and nodded silently. They then knelt in front of Tan Xiu and kowtowed 3 times to express their gratitude to Tan Xiu. "Since you've accepted it, then untie the troublesome thread that's been troubling you," said Tan Xiu. "It's up to you whether you choose to recognize each other or choose to sever your bloodline." "Understood." Hesitation appeared on the faces of the siblings. Tan Xiu shot them a deep look. Then he suddenly turned around and said with his back facing them, "Do you want to hear a story?" Light and Dark, namely Tang Guang and Tang An, who had been bestowed the surname Tang, nodded and said, "Please tell us, Grandmaster." Tan Xiu said, "I once met such a person. He came from a prestigious sect and was favored by tens of thousands of people. It could be said that he was an existence envied by countless people. But one day, he seemed to have changed into a different person. He was no longer a silk pants who grew up with a golden spoon in his mouth. Instead, he became diligent and hardworking. He had parents, relatives, and friends, yet he felt very lonely and even painful at times. It was because he missed his real family on a blue planet in the distant starry sky, the mother who had endured all kinds of hardships to raise him. Tang Guang and Tang Yin exchanged glances. After listening to the story, they immediately realized who Tan Xiu was talking about. It was because the Grand Master in front of them was the only one in line with the protagonist of the story. Tan Xiu continued. He returned to Earth and was no longer a supreme in the immortal world, but he was very satisfied. Without strength, he was willing to start all over again. Without a prominent identity, he could still strive to achieve something. But that unforgettable familial love was something worth cherishing. You two siblings should be aware of who I'm talking about. Tang Guang and Tang Yin nodded. The story I told you is just the beginning, Tan Xiu said. But after I returned to Earth, I uncovered some mysteries that had been puzzling me for a long time, such as my father and the relatives of my father. That is, the Tang family in the imperial capital. Tang Guang and Tang Yin shuddered at the same time. They already knew some things about their Grand Master, Tan Xiu, and they also understood what he wanted to say at this moment. They realized that perhaps their parents had given them to their master not only for the sake of obtaining the cultivation technique, but also because they hoped that they could follow their master and become immortals. After a long time, Tang Yin took off her mask, revealing her stunning beauty that could topple a nation. The complicated expression in her eyes was gradually replaced by a firm light as she said, Grand Master, we siblings are surnamed Tang, and our mother is surnamed Gu. I'm grateful to the one who gave birth to me. I'm grateful to the one who abandoned me. And understands that it's good to have more familial love, but there's no loss if we can't get it. I know what to do, Grand Master. Let's go see them, Grand Master, said Tang Guang faintly. Go. Tan Xiu nodded. Even cultivators and immortals have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Only by tempering one's heart in the tumultuous world of mortals can one's mind be as solid as an impregnable fortress. Understood. Tang Guang and Tang Yin exchanged glances and the duo instantly flew toward Qinglin County. When Tan Xiu landed on the ground again, he saw Wang Rui grabbing a dagger and fiercely cutting down Master Poison's body. Even though the body had been cut into dozens of pieces, he didn't have the slightest intention to stop. The hatred in his heart seemed to be constantly released by the cutting. Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. He then looked at Electrolady and Aquababe and said, You've completed your mission. Go back to where you came from. Say hello to Duanmu Lin if you see him. Understood. Aquababe cupped her fists. Electrolady, on the other hand, looked a bit absent-minded and perfunctorily cupped her fists. Her eyes glanced at the direction where light disappeared and then hesitantly asked, Can you tell me where I can see light in the future, Tan Xiu? You're really reluctant to part with light? Tan Xiu was surprised. Chapter 839. Tan Xiu's impression of Electrolady was that she was a fickle woman who only paid attention to a man's appearance and never paid attention to his inner qualities. Tan Xiu never had a favorable impression of such a woman. On the other hand, Tan Xiu had a good impression of Aquababe. If she had taken a liking to Tang Guang, Tan Xiu might have played matchmaker. But as for Electrolady, Tan Xiu was too lazy to take care of this ill-fated relationship for Tang Guang. Forget it. You're not suitable for each other. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette and lit it. After taking a few puffs, he turned around and left. He didn't want to hear the answer even if he asked. Electrolady strode to catch up and angrily asked, What do you mean? Why do you say we're not suitable? I'm an ability user and he's a cultivator. Isn't this a perfect match for each other? Tan Xiu halted his pace and said with a faint smile, Do you think ability users can be compared with cultivators? Do you think you're a good match? That's right. Electrolady nodded heavily. Ability users do have some power, indeed. Tan Xiu shook his head and contemptuously said, Powerful ability users can even be compared with some cultivators. But how long can an ability user live? 100 years? 200 years? Do you know how long a cultivator can live if his or her cultivation is ceaselessly growing stronger? What does it have to do with how long they can live? Electrolady angrily retorted. Besides, there was once a super powerhouse who lived for 200 to 300 years among our ability users. Unfortunately, it was during the anti-Japanese war and I had no chance to meet him. It has nothing to do with age. Tan Xiu sneered. If Tang Guang cultivates according to my guidance and his cultivation keeps progressing, he can live for at least 1,000 years. If he works hard and is lucky, he can even become an immortal in the future. By that time, it's possible for him to live for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. But what about you? Even if you become a super powerhouse among ability users, you can only live for 200 to 300 years at most. Do you want Tang Guang to be alone on the path of cultivation after you die? This, even though Electrolady wasn't a cultivator, she had heard some rumors about cultivators. It seemed that cultivators with great strength could indeed live for a long time. However, the moment she saw Tang Guang, she was indeed moved. She even found the feeling of her first love. She had never experienced love at first sight before, even though the number of times she had been in love had already exceeded 3 digits. But it was different now. The first time she saw Tang Guang, her heart had been touched, and that kind of emotion burst out uncontrollably. Looking at Tan Xiu's disdainful expression, Electrolady realized the gap between her and Tang Guang, but she was really unwilling to give up. After hesitating for a moment, she seriously said, "Mr. Tang, can you teach me how to cultivate? As long as I become a cultivator, I can accompany Tang Guang for a long time." Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and snappily said, "Do you think you can become a cultivator just by talking? What kind of joke was this? In our world of cultivation, there is a saying, Tao cannot be imparted lightly. Who the hell do you think you are? You want me to teach you a cultivation technique? What qualifications do you have?" Having said that, Tan Xiu was too lazy to pay attention to Electrolady. He strode to Wang Rui, who had finished venting his anger, and said, "Your enemy is dead and the crisis of Qingqing Monastery has been lifted. I've done what I promised you, so consider it as repaying your favor. Let's meet again if fate wills it." Wang Rui stared at Tan Xiu with a blood-stained face. His lips squirmed a few times before he suddenly asked, "If I were to cultivate according to the cultivation technique you taught us, would it be possible for me to have such a strong power like yours now?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "There's no hope for you to achieve it in your lifetime if you don't have any other opportunities. Qingqing Monastery is just a martial arts inheritance, and I can make you 10 or 20 times stronger than before. It's already a favor for you." Wang Rui looked disappointed. After a moment of silence, he said, "What price do I have to pay for you to teach me a cultivation technique, Tan Xiu? Do I have to sell my life to you?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "You're not the kind of person who submits to others, and I don't need you to sell your life to me. Tao cannot be imparted lightly. Even if I teach some people a cultivation technique, I'll still have to weigh the other party's situation. If Qingqing Monastery hadn't suffered this calamity and your father hadn't been killed by Tao Master Poison, you might have had the chance to step into the path of cultivation. But now it's not suitable." "Why not?" asked Wang Rui in a deep voice. "You have too much hostility in your heart. Even if I bring you to the threshold of cultivation, you won't be able to achieve much in the future," said Tan Xiu. "The higher your cultivation, the greater the chance of you suffering a cultivation deviation. It's very easy for you to fall into the demonic path and never be able to recover." "I understand." Wang Rui shot a deep look at Tan Xiu. Although he said that he had given up, he was more determined to become a cultivator and become a powerful expert like Tan Xiu in the future. Since Electrolady and Aquababe were there to deal with the aftermath of the battle, Tan Xiu was too lazy to care about it. After leaving with Jin Shi and the others, he directly went to the cave by the mountain stream where Mo Ao and Zhang Xinyue were staying. His purpose in coming to Qingqing Mountain this time was to get the red silk flower. However, even though his goal had been achieved, he still didn't want to leave immediately. It was the blood-seizing pill. He must refine it as soon as possible to make a breakthrough in his cultivation as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he were to encounter another Golden Core Realm cultivator in the future, he might fail miserably. "Are we leaving, Tan Xiu?" Zhang Xinyue's mood was very complicated. She was somewhat reluctant to part with Tan Xiu, but she also didn't want to stay in this godforsaken Qingqing Mountain anymore. She didn't realize that Tan Xiu had taken root in her heart after getting along with him for many days and the matter of their marriage. I still need to stay here for some time, about a week. Tan Xiu shook his head. If you don't want to stay here, I can send someone to send you back to demonic capital. It's been so many days, I'm sure your big sister is very worried about your safety. Zhang Xinyue hesitated for a moment and then made a decision. Since you still need a week, then I won't go back first. Staying in the metropolis all year round and constantly working hard for my studies and career is actually quite tiring. I've made up my mind. For the next week, I'll stay in Qingqing Mountain to enjoy the scenery and relax. Since you've made up your mind, then I'll tell Aou and the others to protect you. You can go sightseeing wherever you want. Tan Xiu nodded. Why are you so good to me? Asked Zhang Xinyue all of a sudden. Do you want to make up for what you owe me? Tan Xiu opened his mouth but didn't know how to answer. To be honest, he did have the idea to make up for what he owed Zhang Xinyue, but it might be unfair to a woman if he were to say it out loud. Zhang Xinyue's expression turned dark, but a smile immediately appeared on her face as she said, Forget it. You don't have to answer since you don't want to. Whether you want to make up for what you owe me or fall in love with this young lady, we'll forget everything that happened here 7 days later and return to our respective lives. Tan Xiu fell into silence. Zhang Xinyue said it casually, but could he really forget everything that happened just like that? The thread of love was something that couldn't be cut and sorted out. Tan Xiu had always been a free and easy person. Since he couldn't sort it out, he didn't want to continue to be entangled in it. He firmly believed that there would always be a way out when the time came, so he would just take it one step at a time. He no longer thought about the issue between men and women and finally calmed down his mind to begin concocting the blood-seizing pill. The trip to Qingqing Mountain this time was definitely a huge harvest for him. Not to mention the red silk flower, even the large number of medicinal herbs in the underground warehouse of Qingqing Monastery was an important cultivation resource for him. There was also the soul-slaying nail. Thinking about the soul-slaying nail, Tan Xiu resisted the urge to use it immediately and used the demon god spirit devourer cauldron to begin concocting the pill. Since the other medicinal herbs had been prepared, Tan Xiu's process of concocting the pill was very slow, but the process was also very smooth. On the 4th day, along with the sounds of banging coming from the demon god spirit devourer cauldron, Tan Xiu threw the last precious medicinal herb, the red silk flower, into the cauldron. He cast his alchemy art and the pill took shape. The moment the demon god spirit devourer cauldron's lid was opened, the entire cave was filled with a rich medicinal fragrance. Zhang Xinyue, who had been staying in the cave for 4 consecutive days and had never gone out to play, felt her spirit shake. The sweat pores all over her body stretched out as she was immersed in the rich medicinal fragrance. So comfortable. Zhang Xinyue stared at the demon god spirit devourer cauldron in a daze. Her throat even squirmed a few times subconsciously as she swallowed the saliva secreted from her mouth. Absorb. Tan Xiu pinched the absorb symbol and extracted a peanut-sized, crimson blood-seizing pill and immediately swallowed it. Ah woo, no one is allowed to enter the cave without my order. Tan Xiu shouted and quickly stored the demon god spirit devourer cauldron into his interspatial ring. Then, he sat cross-legged on the spot and began to frantically digest the surging medicinal efficacy of the blood-seizing pill. After Tan Xiu swallowed the blood-seizing pill, the erupting flood tide flooded every corner of Tan Xiu's body. The blood-colored flood tide surged ceaselessly, cleansing his muscles and tempering his bones. Even his internal organs were scoured over and over again to increase their flexibility and firmness. The surging blood in Tan Xiu's blood vessels was gradually wrapped by the red medicinal efficacy and solidified. As time went by, the amount of blood in his blood vessels became less and less. On the 3rd day after he took the blood-seizing pill, the amount of blood in his blood vessels was only a quarter of the original amount. However, even if it was only a quarter of the original amount, it didn't affect Tan Xiu in the slightest. Even his originally bright red blood seemed to be illuminated by a layer of golden brilliance at the moment, exuding a hazy golden red light. Hungry! The moment Tan Xiu opened his eyes, A strong sense of hunger made him feel particularly uncomfortable. Under Zhang Xinyue's curious gaze, he quickly took out a lot of food and wolfed it down. For 2 whole hours. Tan Xiu's mouth didn't stop. While eating and drinking, he extracted the scarce energy that nourished his blood and qi and replenished it into his blood vessels. Chapter 840. Zhang Xinyue, who sat across Tang Xiu, was dumbfounded and tongue-tied as she watched him constantly conjure food out of thin air and stuff it into his mouth as though he was the reincarnation of a starving ghost. She roughly estimated that Tang Xiu had eaten at least hundreds of kilograms of food in his stomach for 2 hours. This is the appetite of a whale. Zhang Xinyue finally noticed that Tan Xiu no longer conjured food, but a bottle of wine, and gulped it down. She was previously afraid that Tan Xiu would eat too much, but now it seemed that her worries were groundless. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly saw Tan Xiu yell, "I'll go catch some wild beasts and barbecue them for me. I can eat hundreds of kilograms of barbecued meat." Plop! Zhang Xinyue fell on the edge of the bed. When Tan Xiu stood up and came to her with a confused face, she covered her forehead and sat up again. She was at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh as she said, "Even reincarnated hungry ghosts don't have such an appetite like yours, right? You've been eating for 2 hours and hundreds of kilograms of food, yet you can still eat hundreds of kilograms?" Tan Xiu suddenly realized that his crazy eating and drinking had scared Zhang Xinyue, yet he still felt hungry. If it weren't for the food stored in his interspatial ring that he had eaten in advance, he would probably not have been able to stop eating until now. However, using food to replenish his blood and qi was the best way for him at present. After all, the blood in his blood vessels had been reduced by 3/4. He was afraid that he would become weak if he didn't eat more to replenish his blood and qi. We cultivators can't be treated with common sense. The ancient people once said that you can eat a cow when you're hungry. It's not a lie, nor is it an exaggeration for those special people. I've consumed too much in the past few days, so food is the best way to replenish my qi, said Tan Xiu with a light smile. Even if your consumption is a bit big, you shouldn't have eaten so much. Zhang Xinyue said, "That's hundreds of kilograms of food. I wonder how your stomach can hold it. Even if your digestive system is very good and the food is directly digested, I don't see you going to the toilet, do you?" Cough, cough. Tan Xiu was defeated by Zhang Xinyue's words. If he could absorb 99.9% of the nutrients in the food, the remaining 0.1% of the waste wouldn't be enough for him to go to the toilet, right? Perhaps, after eating a few hundred kilograms of food, he would need to go to the bathroom. However, wouldn't it be too awkward to explain such a question? Tan Xiu shook his head and said with a hollow laugh, "Let's not talk about this topic anymore. In short, you know that we cultivators can't be looked at with the eyes of a normal person. Later, when all and the others are done roasting the game, you can also eat some." Zhang Xinyue nodded and suddenly said, "Tan Xiu, can I have a taste of the medicinal pills you concocted before? These past few days, just smelling the fragrance of the pill made me feel especially energetic. Also, I couldn't move the bed at all before, but the day before yesterday, I dropped my phone under it, so I subconsciously moved the bed. I didn't expect it to move so easily. This means that my strength has increased." Tan Xiu chuckled and said, "The smell of the panacea is indeed very good for ordinary people. Under a subtle influence, it can change your physique. However, I can't give you the medicinal pills I concocted before, else I won't be helping you, but harming you instead." "Why do you say that?" asked Zhang Xinyue with a puzzled expression. "You're not a cultivator, so the huge medicinal efficacy will make your body explode if you take it rashly," said Tan Xiu. Zhang Xinyue's heart turned cold and she immediately stopped talking about taking the medicinal pills. She twisted her body and changed the topic. "When are we leaving this place? I haven't taken a bath for several days, and I've broken the record of not taking a bath since I was a child." "We'll leave this place immediately after I'm full," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "We'll take a rest in Qinglin County first." "All right." Zhang Xinyue looked pleasantly surprised. Didn't you say that you want to go sightseeing in Qingqing Mountain before? Asked Tan Xiu suddenly. I haven't seen you go out for a week, have you? Zhang Xinyue blushed and let out a dry smile. I'm afraid that you'll get into trouble if I leave you here alone, so I didn't go sightseeing. These days. She kept thinking about it and finally realized that she was just like her elder sister. She didn't know when she had fallen in love with him. Of course, she didn't deny that it had something to do with her first time being taken away by him. But liking him was liking him. Even if she didn't want to, she still couldn't extricate herself from it. However, she also thought over and over again that this trip was just a dreamlike love experience. After she left Qingqing Mountain, she would immediately cut off any contact with him and cut off all the feelings she had for him. Late at night, Tan Xiu took Zhang Xinyue, Ao, and the others back to Qinglin County. The entire county was quiet. Pedestrians and vehicles would occasionally pass by even at night. But now, they had rushed to the Sunbao 5-star hotel in Qinglin County, yet they didn't encounter a single pedestrian or car. Why do I feel like something's wrong, Tan Xiu? This situation isn't normal. The moment Zhang Xinyue stepped into the hotel's entrance, she subconsciously turned her head to look at the empty night outside. Maybe it's the recent murder cases that have been popping up one after another that scared the people of Qinglin County. Tan Xiu forced a wry smile. Besides, it's already midnight now, so it's normal for there to be no one outside. Zhang Xinyue reluctantly accepted Tan Xiu's answer. Welcome, how many rooms do you need? Inside the hotel lobby's bar counter, 4 on-duty staff looked at them at the same time. 2 of them subconsciously looked at the rest area on the left, where 4 security guards specially arranged by the hotel were on duty. 2 presidential suites, please, said Tan Xiu. The 4 female cashiers looked surprised and observed Tan Xiu a few times. Suddenly, one of them asked, Are you the young divine Dr. Tan Xiu? You look a bit familiar to me. Since when did I become so famous? Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing. How come no one knows me when I stayed in this hotel before? It's really you? The female cashier was pleasantly surprised. That's great. I finally got to see the face of this great god. My uncle was almost poisoned in the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex not long ago. I heard from him that he was lucky to have you here and escaped from the disaster. You're my uncle's savior, divine Dr. Tang, as well as the savior of my entire family. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ugh. You're welcome. It's a doctor's duty to save people, said Tan Xiu with a smile. A few minutes later, under the enthusiastic greeting of the 4 female cashiers, they finally completed the check-in procedures and successfully entered the presidential suite. What made Tan Xiu speechless was that Zhang Xinyue insisted on staying in the presidential suite with him and even chose a side room. What's your next plan, boss? Asked Mo Ao, who stayed alone in the presidential suite's hall. After Tan Xiu finished washing up and came out, he immediately asked. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly said, I'll return to Shanghai first and then go to the Longquan Bay in Kanas in the west. It's time to explore the immortal trove that has never been opened. It seems like it won't be long before your university's exam, boss. Mo Ao nodded. When you were concocting pills a few days ago, your teacher in charge called you, and I picked it up. Exam? Tan Xiu stared blankly and a wry smile appeared on his handsome face. Come to think of it, he had been studying at Shanghai University for almost a year, but the total time he had spent in school was probably less than 2 months. As for the content in the textbooks, he had almost finished all the freshman courses, but his attendance rate was really low. I gotta find a way to get the green light from the teachers of those subjects after I go back. Else, even if I can pass the exam, I won't have enough credits, which will affect my graduation certificate in the future. Tan Xiu lit up a cigarette and pondered silently. As a matter of fact, the diploma didn't matter to him at all. But his mother was very much looking forward to him getting a diploma from a famous university. It left him with no other choice but to force a smile. Of course, his mother wouldn't blame him if he really didn't want to continue his studies. After all, his current achievements were not necessarily the same even if he had a diploma from the world's top universities. However, his mother would surely be disappointed if he didn't have a diploma from a top university. "Oh, go back and rest. We'll rush back to Shanghai early tomorrow morning," said Tan Xiu as he waved his hand and looked up at the sparse twinkling stars in the dark sky outside the window. 10 minutes later, Zhang Xinyue came out of the room while wiping her wet long hair. Her eyes couldn't help but turn soft when she saw Tan Xiu sitting alone on the sofa, drinking beer and looking out the window. "Are you thinking about something?" Tan Xiu turned his head and looked at Zhang Xinyue's slender and curvy figure, as well as her face that was almost identical to Zhang Xinyue's. He then said with a smile, "Just thinking about something." Zhang Xinyue let out a faint smile and picked up the unopened beer on the coffee table. After opening it and drinking 2 mouthfuls, she smilingly said, "Tell me about it." "You won't understand what I'm thinking about even if I tell you." Tan Xiu shook his head. "However, there's something I want to talk to you about." Zhang Xinyue's expression slightly changed. She hesitated for more than 10 seconds before slowly saying, "Can we not talk about it? There are some things that must be solved." Tan Xiu shook his head. "No matter what you think, I want to tell you that I can't give you the feelings between a man and a woman since I already owe you a lot of emotional debt. However, since that incident happened due to a freak combination of factors, I can't let you suffer any grievances. I won't promise you money since I don't want to treat it as a transaction. However, I can promise you a life without worries in order to make up for what I owe you." "A life without worries?" Zhang Xinyue let out a self-deprecating smile. She then stood up and walked to the window. With her back facing Tan Xiu, she said, "What kind of a life without worries?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.